Chapter 1. The cold wind was blowing, and the atmosphere was solemn. In the classical and solemn martial arts hall of the Fong family, two groups of people stood opposite each other. A young girl in a black suit stood in the middle of the hall, holding her proud head and coldly glancing at the group of people in front of her. She said rudely, "Where is Fong Yen? Let Fong Yen come out to fight. My son is dressing up and will come out soon." A middle-aged man with a refined face answered. He frowned slightly because he didn't like the aggressive attitude of the girl in front of him. He was Fong Yixing, the successor of Fong's Tai Chi, because he liked poetry and painting. He didn't look heroic like a martial artist. Instead, he looked a bit gentle and elegant. Yi Ro sneered and said, "Dressing up? Are you too scared to come out? You're going too far." Fong Yixing looked embarrassed. But he didn't inherit the nature of martial arts from his ancestors, so he couldn't scold this girl to death even if he was a scholar. He felt very uncomfortable because of the stuffy anger in his chest. "Brother Fong Yen will come out soon. He will definitely teach you a lesson." A dignified boy waved his fist and said fiercely. As soon as the boy finished his words, the group of people burst into laughter. "When can Fong Yen beat Yi Ro? The Fong family and the Yi family have a competition every year. Since the first competition 10 years ago, when did Fong Yen beat our Ro?" "Right. He was beaten badly the first time and couldn't get out of bed for more than 10 days, right? Ro is a rare martial arts genius in the Yi family. Her left leg was broken the second time, and 2 front teeth were knocked out the third time. Let's talk about the last time. She was beaten by our Ro and pretended to be dead on the ground." "Oh, what a funny look, gossipy kids." Fong Yixing looked embarrassed. He pointed at the men of the Yi family who mocked his son and scolded, "Gossipy kids." This time, he wanted to argue for his son, but what could he do? What the other party said was the truth. Yi Ro simply waved her hand and said, "It's useless to say more. Let Fong Yen come out to fight. If he's not a talkative child, then let's see who's the real deal." Fong Yixing turned to look at his wife and said, "Go and call Fong Yen out. The men of our Fong family would rather die in battle than endure such humiliation." "Master, something bad has happened, something bad has happened." A young disciple ran over with an anxious look on his face. "What's not good? Let's talk things out." Fong Yixing hated it the most when his family and servants were flustered and didn't have a calm demeanor. "Young master ran away. The young master ran away," the young disciple said with a sad face. "Ran away." Fong Yixing's face twitched. "Why did you run away? Where did he go?" "I don't know," said the disciple. "Young master left a letter." "Quick, open it." "It's not for master. It's for Miss Yi." Fong Yixing felt that he was in a bad mood. Was this son his own? Cowardly rat. Yi Ro was stunned for a moment before she sneered. "Give me the letter." The young disciple didn't dare to disobey this violent woman, so he quickly passed the letter in his hand over. Yi Ro opened the letter and found that there was only a doggerel left behind. "Stinky woman, a good man doesn't fight with a woman, a good dog doesn't block the way. I'm leaving, never to see you again. Fong Yen." Yi Ro's eyes were filled with murderous intent. She clasped her hands together and rubbed them together. The simple yet elegant letter turned into a puff of smoke. "Even if you run to the ends of the earth, I will still crush your bones and scatter your ashes." Rosefinch Secondary. The best private high school in Huaqing. Fong Yen stood at the school gate and looked at the young girls who were wearing white shirts and short skirts. They were full of youthful energy as they walked past him. He took a deep breath of the fragrant air and said to himself with a face full of infatuation, I firmly believe that the student girl wearing a translucent white shirt with a black bra underneath is the sexiest goddess. It's better to sneak away than to get beaten up every year. Fong Yan's handsome face showed a hint of ferocity. Yi-ro, you damn bitch, I'm afraid you never thought that I would come to school to be a teacher, right? Want to beat me? No way. Am I the kind of pitiful, weak, and undignified man who gets beaten up by others casually? After asking this question that didn't need anyone to answer, Fong Yan felt an inexplicable sadness in his heart. At least I have to beat up that wild woman Yi-ro once a year. Just like cats eat fish and dogs eat meat, Ultraman has to beat up small monsters. This is the rule. He adjusted the collar of his white shirt, took out a pair of black-rimmed glasses from his left pocket and put them on. He took out a small mirror from his right pocket and looked at his facial features, hairstyle, and made sure there were no unidentified objects in the corner of his eyes. He couldn't help but praise, what a handsome man. A fat middle-aged man trotted over, passed by Fong Yan, and quickly retreated like a ball. He looked at Fong Yan in confusion and asked, Are you Mr. Fong Yan? I am. Fong Yan nodded. Are you really Fong Yan? Jing's face was full of disbelief. Didn't you say I'm here to pick up a new teacher? How come it's such a ridiculously young guy? If he stood on the podium and gave a lecture, how embarrassing would it be for the slightly older students sitting under the podium? You're older than the teacher. Would this sentence become the most vicious verbal attack in Rosefinch Secondary? Absolutely. Fong Yan said with a smile. I'm the director of the headmaster's office, Jing. Jing looked up and down at Fong Yan carefully again. After eliminating the possibility that this was a prank, he raised his heavy head and said, The headmaster wants to see you. Vice headmaster's office. Fong Yan looked around the bright, spacious, but elegantly decorated office. He was sure of two things. First, Rosefinch Secondary was very rich, and the teacher's benefits were very good. Second, the headmaster in charge of human resources was a woman. The headmaster wasn't there. The fatso who brought him in poured him a cup of tea and left in a hurry, leaving him alone in the empty room. Fong Yan waited for a long time. The hot water cooled down, and the aroma of the tea dissipated, but the headmaster who wanted to see him was still nowhere to be seen. He stood up and stretched, then he walked around the office and looked around. Soon, his eyes were attracted by a tall vase in the corner. The streamlined agari connected from head to tail, and the gorgeous yellow agari decorated it lazily in echelons. It looked very beautiful. Stairway to Heaven. Fong Yan was stunned. He didn't expect to see a difficult flower arrangement like Stairway to Heaven here. He squatted down to admire it carefully, then he shook his head lightly. Not good enough. He wanted to turn around and leave, but he stopped. After hesitating again and again, he finally couldn't help but pick up the scissors on the windowsill and start trimming. He was bold and ruthless, as if he had a grudge against this flower. Clang! Lu Chaoga pushed the office door open and saw a strange man squatting in the corner, waving the scissors and destroying his favorite flower arrangement. The broken branches and leaves on the ground were a mess. She felt like she was going to faint. Her face was pale, and her eyes were wide open. She shouted anxiously, What are you doing? Fong Yan was engrossed in his work. He was completely focused on the task at hand. When he heard the shout, he answered, No. Chapter 2. The silver-white professional suit couldn't hide the plump curves of her delicate body. Her towering breasts trembled violently because of the owner's anger. Even though she was wearing a pair of thick black-rimmed glasses that looked a little old-fashioned, it was difficult to suppress her sharp, capable, and mature fashion. As the vice principal of Rosefinch Secondary, Lu Chaoge was indeed too young and too beautiful. Lu Chaoge graduated from an Ivy League school in the United States. After graduation, she stayed to teach at the best Townsend Harris High School in New York. Because of her bold and varied teaching style, she was very famous in the high school circle in the United States. It was said that the principal of Rosefinch Secondary visited her 3 times and invited her back from the United States to be the vice principal of the school. Lu Chaoge was fascinated by flower arrangement when she was in school. She thought it was the most beautiful thing in the world. This Stairway to Heaven pot was a masterpiece that she created after failing many times. She had poured a lot of effort and emotion into it. Now that her favorite and proudest work of art was destroyed, Lu Chaoge naturally erupted like a volcano. She couldn't accept it. After shouting the words, "What are you doing?" she rushed in the direction of Fong Yan. She only realized when she was halfway there. She asked him, "What are you doing?" And the meaning of his answer was no. Such a person. How could such a person appear in her office? What were the people in the secretariat doing? Stop right now. Lu Chaoge only felt that her entire universe was about to burn. If she could transform into Ultraman, she would definitely send this shameless and dirty gangster to outer space and let him fall in love with aliens. Then, based on his love story with aliens, she would write a script called The Bastard from Earth and broadcast it on an alien TV station. It would definitely be a hit. Fong Yan stopped. He turned to look at the outrageously beautiful woman who was rushing at him aggressively. He immediately made a defensive posture with his hands and said, "Let's talk it out. Don't be impulsive. Even if you are impulsive, you can't beat me." Lu Chaoge really didn't dare to rush. It was not because she was ready to have a good talk with this man, but because that bastard was waving a pair of scissors in his hand. A wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. A good woman is afraid of hooligans and gays. Lu Chaoge retreated to the door of the office and shouted, "Security, come here." Dong dong dong, the office director, Jing Jing, quickly ran over and put his ball-like body in front of Lu Chaoge. He pointed at Fong Yan and shouted, "What are you doing? Fong Yan, what are you doing? If you have any problems, come at me. Don't hurt our principal Lu. Come for you." Looking at his purplish-red face and the layer of oil on his thick fat, Fong Yan rejected him in his heart. "You wish. I'm helping to trim the flowers and plants." Fong Yan smiled shyly and pointed at the stairway to heaven that she had trimmed. With a noble expression, she said, "I have nothing to do anyway." Lu Chaoge was so angry that she was about to cry. How could they be flowers and plants? They were flower arrangements, works of art. Did you need to trim them? Could ordinary people trim them? However, listening to the conversation between them, it seemed that Jing Jing knew this rascal. Fong Yan. Wasn't he the new teacher she was going to see? Fong Yan. Lu Chaoge looked at Fong Yan as if she was looking at a monster. Would such a guy be a teacher mislead the students? No, this matter had to be carefully considered. If this guy didn't have real talent, no matter who introduced him, she would keep him out of the door. As the vice principal of Rosefinch Secondary, she was responsible for the school and the students. Fong Yan, this is our principal Lu. Jing Jing introduced them in the middle. Seeing that Fong Yan was still holding the scissors in his hand, he scolded, "Put down the knife in your hand. What do you want to do with the knife? Who do you want to scare? I'm telling you, as long as I'm here, don't even think about touching a hair of our principal Lu. I'm not a hairdresser. Why would I touch your principal's hair?" Fong Yan explained. "Besides, I'm not holding a knife in my hand. It's a scissor." Knife and scissors were two different concepts. If the other party had the intention to pursue responsibility, the consequences would be extremely different. When Fang Yan spoke, he still obediently turned around and put the scissors back on the windowsill. With the scissors back in place, the danger was resolved. Lu Chaoge quickly walked to the vase, pointed at her stairway to heaven and asked, "Who let you touch it? How can you touch other people's things without their permission? Do you have any manners? Do you have any manners?" "It was Art who let me touch them," Fang Yan explained. "What?" Lu Chaoge widened her already big eyes. Who was Art? Was there such a person in the school? What right did she have to let someone touch my flower arrangement? It's the heart of art. It's the pursuit of beautiful things that made me unable to restrain myself. I couldn't bear to touch them. Fang Yan looked at Lu Chaoge with a sincere face. It's the processing and perfection of the work. It's the telepathic connection between our preferences. In all honesty, Lu Xiaoge felt like he had been convinced by him when he looked at his delicate and serious expression and the man's deep and firm eyes. It must be like this. This voice actually appeared in her heart. Unfortunately, after all, Lu Xiaoge was Lu Xiaoge. She was the queen of education in the American high school world and the vice principal of Rosefinch Secondary. She had seen more men than Fang Yan. How could she be conquered by Fang Yan's almost unskilled way of coaxing a little girl who had just begun to have her first awakening of love? No need. Lu Chaoge waved her arm and said resolutely. Without my permission, what right do you have to touch other people's things? Who gave you the right to do so? I've already explained, Fang Yan said innocently. The heart of art. Unable to restrain yourself. It would have been better if she hadn't mentioned this reason, but the mention of it made Lu Chaoge even angrier. I must look like an idiot, right? No, no. Fang Yan quickly denied. You must look delicious. Lu Chaoge was dumbfounded. Was this guy flirting with her? Was he flirting with her? Jing was also dumbfounded. What was this guy doing? How could he talk to the principal like this? Didn't he know that Principal Lu Chaoge was famous for being cold and dignified in the school and was called the legendary Ice Goddess? Jing decided to play his role as the vice director of the office. He quickly rolled to the front of Fang Yan, pointed at Fang Yan and shouted, Fang Yan, what are you talking about? Apologize to our Principal Lu. Apologize. Why? Fang Yan felt very wronged. Do you think Principal Lu is not delicious? Of course not delicious. Jing shut his mouth in time. Of course Principal Lu is delicious, but even if she is delicious, we can't eat her. Why should I discuss this with you? Can this kind of problem be discussed in front of Principal Lu? You don't think she's delicious, but I think she's delicious, Fang Yan said. But it's not your fault. Everyone has their own preferences. We have different aesthetic tastes. I think Principal Lu is very good. She's tall, has long legs, and has a beautiful face. If we use the standard of the secular world to evaluate her, I must give her 101 points. She's beyond my understanding and definition of a beauty. I didn't say Principal Lu is not delicious. Jing hurriedly explained. Seeing Lu Chaoge's cold eyes glancing at him, Jing was sweating profusely. He quickly changed the target and shouted at Fang Yan, what's wrong with you? Is this how you talk to the leader? Do you still want to be a teacher at Rosefinch Secondary? I've never seen such an unqualified candidate. You want to be a teacher? Dream on. Get out, get out. Fang Yan shrugged his shoulders and looked at Lu Chaoge. I'm sorry, I'm being presumptuous. But, if you really like flower arrangement, you should be able to understand this feeling. Fang Yan looked at Jing again and said, when I grow to have a good figure like yours, I'll definitely roll like a ball. You. Jing wanted to lose his temper again. It seems that I failed the interview. Fang Yen shrugged his shoulders and said with a smile. He stepped toward the door. Don't go. Lu Xiaoge's eyes stared fixedly at the stairway to heaven that Fang Yen had trimmed as he shouted loudly. Chapter 3. Yes, you're not allowed to leave. Jing once again rolled in front of Fang Yen, blocking his way out. Do you think it's that easy to leave after destroying something? Didn't I already apologize? Fang Yen turned to look at Lu Xiaoge, frowning slightly. This woman was harder to deal with than he had imagined, as well as superficial. Based on the usual plot in movies and TV shows, the female lead should have discovered the male lead's uniqueness by now. Then, she would grab the male lead's hand and try to get him to stay, stomp her feet and act coquettishly. She would even say with her eyes full of affection and shyness, "You're so annoying. I've already apologized. Can't you just forgive me? Can't you just forgive me? Can't you just forgive me?" He swore to God that if this woman in front of him was willing to do that to him. Fang Yen shook his head. It seemed like he was overthinking things. If apologies were useful, why would we need the school's security? Jing said proudly. This guy actually dared to scold him like a bull. He was definitely going to torture him into a monkey. This line is already outdated. Nowadays, you can't use it to scare people or pick up girls. Can you change it to something else? Fang Yen looked at Jing and kindly suggested. Security, security. Jing shouted loudly. If words didn't work, then he could only resort to violence. Kid, I'll let you know what it means to be well-versed in both literature and martial arts. This line isn't bad, although it's not very literary. Fang Yen commented. Two security guards in green uniforms quickly ran in and asked, "Director Zheng, what's the matter?" "Tie him up," Jing ordered angrily. "Yes, Director Zheng." The two security guards answered and pounced on Fang Yen from both sides. Swoosh, the two of them reached out at the same time, but they ended up holding hands. Fang Yen, whom they wanted to capture, stood not too far away and looked at them with a smile. What was going on? Why was that guy dodging so quickly? He didn't even blink, and he was already gone. "Get out," Lu Xiaoge suddenly said. "Yes, tie him up." Jing waved his hand and said. "I am asking you to get out." Lu Xiaoge glared at Jing and pointed her finger. You, and you." Jing's fat face turned red, then purple, then white. Then, with a smile on his face, he said, Yes, we will go out now. I will stand guard at the door. If Principal Lu has any instructions, just let me know. We don't know where this person is from. Principal Lu, you must be careful. It's not that I don't understand, it's that women change fast. When he turned around to leave, Jing felt that he was living an unclear, humiliating and tragic life. It shouldn't be like this, he said to himself. Clang, the door was closed, and the office was quiet again. Did you cut this? Lu Xiaoge pointed at the vase of flowers and said. I am afraid you won't believe me even if I deny it now, right? Fang Yen grinned. The corners of his lips were slightly raised, and he looked like a sunshine. Lu Xiaoge didn't notice Fang Yan's smiling face. Her eyes were still on the vase of flowers, and she said, Is this the stairway to heaven? This is the stairway to heaven in my mind, Fang Yen said. He knew that this woman should have noticed the change in the flower arrangement. Fortunately, it was not hopeless. The stairway to heaven in your mind. Flower arrangement is like painting. A good artist shouldn't be restricted by some rules and regulations. Besides, because the materials are similar, it is impossible to have two vases of the same work. Is that right? Yes. Lu Chaoga nodded. Was this guy trying to give her a lecture? The first realm of flower arrangement is resemblance. As long as the shape echoes the name we give it, it will be fine. The second realm is spirit-likeness. It exudes that kind of temperament from the inside out, which is rare and precious. The third realm is ghost acts. I have seen it, but I can't do it. The fourth realm is heaven crafting. That is a legend. Ghost acts. Lu Chaoga was shocked. She was also a fan of flower arrangement. How could she not know the realm of this ghost acts? You have seen it. Yes. Fong Yan nodded. Your stairway to heaven belongs to spirit-likeness. Do you have any objections to my evaluation? Although she was unwilling, Lu Chaoga still nodded frankly and said, I am also a beginner. Have you been to Wudong Mountain? Fong Yan asked. No. Lu Chaoga shook her head. Have you seen the stairway to heaven? On TV or in pictures, there is a mountain road on Wudong Mountain. Yes. Lu Chaoga nodded. Simple and unadorned, surrounded by mist. When you look up, you can't see the end. Fong Yan walked to Lu Chaoga's side and stood side by side with her. He pointed at the flower arrangement and said, the origin of the name Stairway to Heaven is based on the Stairway to Heaven in Wudong Mountain, right? Yes. Although the linear eucalyptus that you chose echoes from the beginning to the end, the bad part is the beginning. What is heaven? What can't be seen or touched is heaven. I cut out the Euclid to give the imagination a lot of room for imagination. Heaven shouldn't have boundaries. And this yellow handrail, although the layout is lazy and relaxed, it doesn't match the theme of the stairway to heaven. What does it match? Complexity. The stairway to heaven is a path that goes straight into the clouds. It is simple and straight. Although these yellow handrails add beauty to it, they are also a burden. This is a common problem of female flower arrangers when they create art. They feel that every flower is beautiful and they don't want to abandon every leaf. In the end, it became this happy ending. The stairway to heaven doesn't need too many embellishments, and it doesn't need too bright colors. It's domineering and direct, simple and spiritual. I only need 3 flowers. The flowers aren't the main point, the eucalyptus is. I understand. Lu Chaoga sighed softly. I also have the same problem that those women often have. It's normal. Fong Yan smiled. Because you are also a woman. Lu Chaoga glared at him fiercely. Then she remembered that when she asked him what he was doing, he replied with the word no. She walked back to her large desk and sat down. She looked up at Fong Yan standing in front of her and said, You want to be a teacher? Yes. Fong Yan smiled and nodded. Why? Lu Chaoga asked. Why do you want to be a teacher? My grandfather is a teacher. Fong Yan answered without any hesitation. Before coming to the interview, he had already guessed that the head examiner might ask such a lousy question. Therefore, he had already filled in a perfect answer sheet in his heart. My grandfather's grandfather is also a teacher. My father is a teacher. Even my mother was a kindergarten teacher before my father hooked her up with my mother. Silkworms will only dry up when their threads run out when they die. Yes, being a teacher is very tiring. There's an endless supply of chalk and homework. But being a teacher is also very great. Peaches and plums don't speak of each other. Every new year, countless students will call to express their concern. There are even more people who personally come home to visit their teachers. There are even people who specially fly back from the United States and Canada. To be honest, I am very envious. I am very envious of them. Therefore, when I was very young, I made up my mind to be a glorious teacher of the people. I want to dedicate my youth, my talent, my body. As long as there is light, there will be warmth. Fong Yan looked at Lu Chaoga with a burning gaze and said, Principal Lu, please give me a chance to do anything for the students and you. Lu Chaoga sat there in a daze for a long time without saying anything. To be honest, she didn't know how to deal with this freak in front of her. She had never experienced such a blatant way of applying for a job, and she had never met a person who promoted the profession he was going to be in to be so noble and great. Listening to his words, it made people feel that he was not going to be a teacher, but the Guanyin Bodhisattva Buddha who saved people from suffering. If you said he was fake, his expression was so serious. If you said he was real, you couldn't help but doubt the level of your IQ. Principal. Fong Yan waited for a while and didn't get the response he deserved, so he couldn't help but remind her. Did he overdo it? It shouldn't be. When he was practicing in front of the mirror in the morning, even he was touched. Well. Lu Chaoga's brain returned to normal. She looked at Fong Yan's face and said, I know. You will definitely become a good teacher. Thank you for your recognition and encouragement, Principal Lu. I will work hard and do my best as a teacher. The old principal told me that you were invited by the old principal, so there shouldn't be any big problems in terms of ability. However, anyone who wants to be a teacher at Rosefinch Secondary has to go through a 3-month assessment period. If after 3 months you can't pass the school's assessment standard, then, I'm sorry. I will persuade you to resign. Xingjing. Lu Chaoga shouted toward the door. Xingjing trotted in and asked with a smile, Principal, are you looking for me? Take teacher Fong Yan to go through the formalities, and then send him to grade 1 class 9 to get to know the students. He will be taking over the language class for this class. Yes, Principal. Headmaster, Xingjing answered quickly. After the door closed, Lu Chaoga left her seat and walked to the corner of the room. Looking at the increasingly vivid stairway to heaven, she sighed softly and said, It's so beautiful that I'm crying. Walking out of Lu Chaoga's office, Fong Yan looked up at the blue sky of the campus and couldn't help but sigh. Instead of fighting and killing, it's better to look at the school bell. What did you say? Xingjing turned around and asked. I said, from the back, you really look like Chow Yun Fat. Why are you scolding me? Xingjing jumped up like a rabbit whose tail had been stepped on. Chapter 4. I said that you look like Chow Yun Fat. How is that insulting? Don't I know what I look like? Xingjing felt that this guy was insulting his intelligence. He always liked to treat others as retarded. Am I an idiot? What a joke, I just look delicious. Fong Yan felt that this person was quite honest. Director Zheng, you can have no confidence in yourself, but you can't erase your great image in other people's eyes. Fong Yan said seriously, the charm of a mature man, the charm of a successful man. This kind of charm is not comparable to a man like me who only has a good face. Really? Hearing Fong Yan's words, Xingjing couldn't help but straighten his fat belly. As the deputy director of Rosefinch's office, he felt that he was quite charming most of the time. Didn't the new clerks like to joke with him and wink at him? That's right. Fong Yan nodded with certainty. My goal in life is to be Director Zheng. I don't know when I can become a model of a successful man like Director Zheng. I'm afraid I won't have a chance in this lifetime, right? Actually, you are not bad. Xingjing had a little good impression of Fong Yan. But, this is a school. As a teacher, you have to pay attention to your image and words. Think about it, whose office did you go to today? That was Principal Lu's office. You cut her flower arrangement without asking for her permission. Oh, my mother. Do you know how much Principal Lu loves her flowers and plants? She doesn't allow the auntie to clean the office for her. She takes care of those little babies herself. But you, as soon as you go in, you cut. You are lucky that Principal Lu didn't cut you. By the way, why didn't Principal Lu cut you? Maybe because Principal Lu thinks that I cut it better, Fang Yan said modestly. Impossible. Jing Jing directly denied Fang Yan's conclusion. Principal Lu is famous for her picky taste. How can an ordinary person enter her eyes? I think it's because of you that you don't know the rules. As a leader, Principal Lu should also sympathize with the new staff, right? However, you can't do it again. You can't do it again. I definitely won't. Fang Yan hurriedly promised. That. Director Zheng, I say, why do I feel that you are a little hostile towards me? I just got here and don't know the rules. Did I do something wrong to make you angry? Jing Jing glanced at Fang Yan coldly and said, do you know who President Lu is? The vice principal of Rosefinch Secondary. What else? I don't know. If you don't know, then there's no need to know. Jing Jing's tone became a little fierce, and he said with a sneer, however, you should respect Principal Lu in the future. Don't talk with a cheeky face, and don't think that a toad can eat swan meat. Otherwise, hee hee. Do you have a crush on her? Fang Yan asked in a low voice. Jing Jing was shocked. He glanced around and found that no one heard their conversation. Then he was relieved and said angrily, Fang Yan, don't talk nonsense. How can I like President Lu? Is there someone else who likes her? You shouldn't know these things. Remember my words. Stay away from President Lu. Don't be like those other guys who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Otherwise, you will have to bear the consequences. Director Zheng. Fang Yan took Jing Jing's fat hand and said, do you think I deserve President Lu? Of course not, Jing Jing said resolutely. Only that legendary figure was worthy of Principal Lu. He's a ninth heaven flying dragon, and you're just a small loach in a pond. Then what else are you worried about? Fang Yan said with a smile. I don't have any obvious shortcomings, but I have a lot of advantages. One of them is knowing one's own limitations. I just want to flatter President Lu and ask her to take care of me in the future. As for the rest, I don't even think about it. I don't dare to think about it. A poor teacher wants to hit on the vice president of the school. Isn't that asking for trouble? That's true. Jing Jing nodded. Let's go. I'll take you to go through the procedures and then take you to the 9th class to see your students. Class 9, that's not a place that makes people worry. Work hard. Otherwise, if you can't pass the probation period, you will still be kicked out. Rosefinch Secondary is not a school where cats and dogs can be teachers. That's right. How can cats and dogs be teachers? Just let them catch the rats and guard the gate, Fang Yan said in agreement. Jing Jing walked a few steps and turned to stare at Fang Yan and said, why do I feel like you are scolding me again? Director Zheng, I'm innocent. You are my light and my idol. How can I scold you? The uniform of Rosefinch Secondary was very beautiful. The girls wore white shirts and a red and black checkered skirt. A few girls wore beautiful leggings, but most of them revealed a large part of their smooth and beautiful calves. The guy was wearing a white shirt with a black zipper tie, a pair of black pants, and a pair of white sneakers. He looked fashionable and casual. If it was autumn or winter, they would wear a dark blue blazer. Fang Yan stood on the podium and looked at the students below the podium. The students also looked at Fang Yan, who was standing on the podium, strangely. Another new student. Looks like this guy is a bit old. Someone whispered. But he looks quite handsome. Wow, he's smiling. He looks so good when he smiles. That's my favorite dish. Jing cleared his throat and suppressed the whispers below the stage. He then said, "Dear students, let me introduce you. Standing next to me is the new teacher, Fang Yan. Teacher Fang Yan will be in charge of your language class from now on." Boom, the whole class was in an uproar. He's a teacher. Are you kidding me? I thought he was a student. How can he be our teacher at such a young age? The school won't give up on our class, right? Wow, that's great. My wish came true. I was still praying last night that we would be given a young and handsome language teacher. Quiet. Quiet. Jing slapped the podium. Originally, it was the dean's job to introduce new teachers to the students. But because he and Fang Yan got along well, he personally sent him over. He didn't expect these students to not give him face at all. They questioned the new teacher in public, making him feel embarrassed. Let me tell you, don't be fooled by teacher Fang Yan's young age. He's a very capable teacher. As for what he's capable of, you'll slowly understand him in the future. The school didn't give up on you. Not only did the school not give up on you, but they also value you very much. That's why we specially invited teacher Fang Yan to be your language teacher. I hope you'll work hard in the future. Under the leadership of teacher Fang Yan, you'll achieve even better results. Shuemu University is waving to you. A bright future is saying hello to you. Worried that the students would ask weird questions again, Jing decided to leave quickly. He turned to look at Fang Yan and said, "Teacher Fang Yan, I'll leave this place to you. Get to know the students better and communicate well. I believe they'll accept and like you." Okay. Thank you, Dean Zheng. Fang Yan said gratefully. After sending Jing out, Fang Yan walked into the classroom again. His eyes met dozens of eyes in the class. Fang Yan wanted to sing a song. Our school is a garden. The flowers in the garden are so bright. Big sister, come quickly. Little sister, don't run away. Hold hands and sing that song. How happy our life is. Waha, waha. How happy our life is. With Fang Yan's sharp eyes, he had already found a few beautiful girls in the class. This filled him with even more passion and anticipation for his future career. Is he really a teacher? He doesn't look like one. Oh no, the school really gave up on us. I have to call my dad to transfer me to another class. No, transfer to another school. Hey, Fang Yan, are you a monkey invited by Goddess of Mercy? You're here to play with us, right? Mockery and doubt filled the air. No one believed that Fang Yan was a qualified teacher. You can't bully me. Fang Yan felt wronged. He looked at the students and said, I was just bullied. Chapter 5. You can't bully me, I was just bullied. What kind of *T reason is that? The classroom was quiet for a moment, then the students became even noisier. Teacher, does your mom know you're so cute? So you were just bullied. Who's helping the people get rid of the evil? Waha, he's really a monkey hired by Goddess of Mercy to make us happy. Mr. Fang, do you know how to do a somersault? Do a somersault for us. Fang Yan was not angry. He stood on the podium and smiled as he watched the students make a ruckus at him. Gradually, the students realized that something was wrong. Silence was the precursor of a storm. This guy had such a wretched smile as if he had a card up his sleeve. He definitely had a killer move that he hadn't used yet. Some of the smarter students shut their mouths. 1, 2, 3, more and more people became silent, and the classroom became quieter. What right do you have to be my teacher? A sudden voice came from the back. The students turned around and saw that the person who stood up was the muscular man who wore a pair of thick glasses and studied the 24 histories all day long. Their eyes were filled with excitement. There's going to be a good show. Huang Haoren was a smart person, but he didn't stay silent like the other students. Some things that others didn't say, he would say. Some things that others didn't do, he would do. Huang Haoren's father was a reporter from the Huaxia Metropolis Daily, and his mother was a university professor. Strictly speaking, his family was also a scholarly family. Huang Haoren's language level was very good, and his writing skills were excellent. Because he was the first in his class during the high school entrance examination, he was appointed as the temporary language class representative of Class 9 when he entered Rosefinch High School. His dream was to become a reporter who exposed the abuses of the times. Therefore, he was like a sponge absorbing knowledge and nutrition. However, the school sent them such a language teacher. "Student, what did you say just now? I didn't hear it clearly." Fang Yan looked at Huang Haoren and asked aloud. "I say, what right do you have to be my teacher?" Huang Haoren looked straight into Fang Yan's eyes, not evading at all. Fang Yan narrowed his eyes and smiled. He only asked Fang Yan why he was my teacher and not our teacher, which showed that he was quite a proud guy. In his eyes, the other students were not worthy of being mentioned in the same breath as him. Fang Yan was a little curious about him. He wanted to know what kind of freaks were in this worrisome Class 9. "I'm curious. What are the requirements to be your teacher?" Fang Yan asked. Huang Haoren closed the 24 histories in his hand and said in a loud and clear voice, "My teacher must be erudite from the past to the present, widely read and memorize, to be familiar with the official history by heart, and to have unofficial history as a model. Rich social experience, understanding of ideas. This kind of person is worthy to be my teacher." Huang Haoren stared at Fang Yan unkindly and said sarcastically, "What can you do?" Provocation. A naked provocation. Many students had flames flickering in their eyes, and even more people's mouths were twitching. Fun, it was really fun. They were very curious to see how this child teacher would deal with Huang Haoren's challenge. If he couldn't give a satisfactory answer today, if he couldn't suppress the arrogance of a super scholar like Huang Haoren, then it would be difficult for him to stand in this class in the future. If a teacher couldn't even deal with his students, who would still respect him? Fang Yan sighed softly. After his eyes swept across the audience, he said with infinite emotion, "Now that things have come to this, I can't hide it anymore. I've always been a very low-key man. What's the saying again? The bird that sticks out gets shot. I'm not a person who likes to be in the limelight. But, since you insist on an answer, and there should be a harmonious environment for frank communication between teachers and students, I've decided to confess to you." Holding their breaths, everyone was looking forward to it. Fang Yan straightened his back and stood straight on the podium. His gaze was deep, and his eyebrows were raised. He enunciated each word clearly, "I am knowledgeable, and have a strong memory. I know the official history by heart, and the unofficial history as a mirror. Rich in social experience and well-informed in thinking. I am the kind of teacher you want." Silence. Dead silence. What kind of answer was this? Was this an answer? Wasn't this too shameless? How could he say such a thing? Pfft, someone couldn't help laughing. Sorry, I didn't mean it." A little fatso's face was red and he waved his hand to apologize. This laughter seemed to be a secret signal. After a few seconds, the others also laughed. "Mr. Fang, don't be so nice, okay? I found that I kind of like you. Teacher Fang, why don't you stop teaching language and teach us how to tell jokes?" Really too shameless, Huang Haoren's expression was extremely embarrassed. Untalented and incompetent, yet arrogant and conceited. Such a teacher, he was completely disappointed. "Pa," Fong Yan knocked on the table with an eraser and shouted, "Quiet. Quiet. Everyone be serious, we're in class." So, everyone laughed even more happily. This guy was too funny. Fong Yan also grinned and said, "You don't believe me." "I don't believe you," all the students answered in unison. "How can I make you believe me?" "I'll ask you 3 questions. As long as you can answer them correctly, you pass." Huang Haoren said aloud. "Don't worry, I won't deliberately make things difficult for you. If you think it's unfair, you can also ask me 3 questions. Is the scope of the test limited to high school Chinese knowledge?" Huang Haoren sneered and said, "You only know high school Chinese knowledge. I'm afraid that when I set the questions, the content is beyond high school Chinese knowledge, and you'll say that I'm cheating." Fong Yan said. "Then let's start." Huang Haoren snorted coldly. In addition to being an instrument, the bell and drum also refer to time in ancient times. "What time does the drum refer to?" "Night." Fong Yan answered without hesitation. Huang Haoren was not surprised that Fong Yan could answer this question correctly. This was a common-sense question. If one had a broader knowledge, such a question would not be difficult for many people. Which historical story does the swan goose sending letters originate from? Fong Yan looked at the students and asked, "Do you know the answer?" "I don't know." "If you know, you won't say it." "Teacher, other people's answers don't count." "If it counts, it's your loss." "Cheating, this is cheating." Fong Yan smiled and said, "I asked if you know the answer. I just want to say the answer when you don't know. This way, I can show that I'm better than you and have the qualifications to be your teacher." Fong Yan looked at Huang Haoren and said, "This sentence comes from the story, Su Wu Shepherd's Sheep. Book of Han 54. Several months later, the Zhao Emperor ascended the throne. Several years later, the Xiongnu and Han made peace. The Han sought Wu and the others. The Xiongnu said that Wu died. Later, the Han envoy returned to the Xiongnu. Chang Hui asked the guards to come with him. At night, he met with the Han envoy. The envoy was called Chanyu. He said that the Son of Heaven shot a goose into the forest and obtained it. He said that Wu and the others were in a swamp. After Chanyu heard this, he could only let Su Wu return. Later on, people used the swan goose as a metaphor for letters and the person who delivered them. Huang Haoren's expression changed. To be able to say the source of the story in Swan Goose sending letters was not too difficult. However, to be able to memorize the original words in the Book of Han word for word was not easy. Huang Haoren believed that he had read many ancient books. Some of the stories could give him a rough idea of the background and story. However, he could not force himself to memorize the original words like Fong Yan. Is this answer correct? Who knows? Is it true? Isn't this too amazing? Who has the Book of Han? Quickly search. If you don't have it, use your phone. Haven't you heard of the saying that if you can't decide on internal affairs, ask Baidu? If you can't decide on external affairs, ask Google. If you can't decide on sex, ask Tianya. The answer is correct. Huang Haoren said in a heavy voice. There's one last question. Chapter 6. Huang Haoren wanted to give up at this point. Once an expert made his move, he would know whether he was good or not. He deliberately chose 2 questions that belonged to the field of Chinese but were a little obscure to test Fong Yan. Fong Yan quickly said the answers. Moreover, his answers were far beyond his expectations. He was clear about such knowledge points, so he should not be unfamiliar with some knowledge that was clearly written in Chinese textbooks. In this case, as a high school Chinese teacher, he was completely qualified. Huang Haoren felt surprised in his heart. This teacher was not empty because of his young age. He still read a lot of books. Otherwise, he would not be able to answer the 2 questions that he set so easily. He even memorized the ancient classics like Book of Han, which he flinched at the sight of. If the teacher was great, the students would naturally benefit a lot. However, Huang Haoren felt extremely sour in his heart. The knowledge of ancient literature that he had always been proud of was suppressed to the point that he could not lift his head. This cruel truth was not what he was willing to accept. Therefore, he still insisted on asking the 3rd question. He took off his glasses and carefully wiped them with a yellow cloth. Huang Haoren did not easily ask the 3rd question because he knew that the young teacher in front of him, who seemed to be almost the same age as him, was not easy to deal with. He wanted to increase the difficulty of the 3rd question. He wanted to use this 3rd chance to test Fang Yan. This was a little impulsive and deliberately made things difficult for others. But, he wanted to win. If he won this time, he would win back a little pride and self-esteem. Fang Yan looked at Huang Haoren. All the students in the 9th class looked at Huang Haoren. After losing 2 battles, Huang Haoren definitely wanted to win back a lost city. The 3rd question was his last chance. What would he be tested on the 3rd question? Huang Haoren put on his glasses, held the glasses cloth tightly in his palm, and said softly, "Recite, Laozi 5,000 wen." What? Many students did not understand. What was a Laozi 5,000 wen? It's Tao Te Ching. A student replied. Wow, all the students stared at Huang Haoren as if they were looking at a madman. Wasn't this man too vicious? Many people weren't familiar with Laozi's 5,000 writings, but they more or less had some understanding of Tao Te Ching. Not to mention that the ancient texts were difficult to memorize, just the length of the Tao Te Ching alone was enough to give people a splitting headache. The name Laozi's 5,000 writings was already very clear. This essay had more than 5,000 words. The current Tao Te Ching was divided into 81 chapters, and it clearly had the Taoist ideology of 9 out of 9 returning to 1. Wasn't it bullying to ask someone to memorize such a long classic article without missing a single word? What a bully! A little beauty stood up and said, Huang Haoren, you can't do that. Even if you want to make things difficult for Mr. Fang, you don't have to resort to such underhanded means, do you? Why don't you let Mr. Fang recite the full text of Dream of the Red Chamber? In that case, you'll definitely win. Exactly. If you let Mr. Fang recite it, can't you recite it for us first? Another girl echoed. Mr. Fang, don't listen to him. You have already won. You are qualified to be our teacher. A third girl stood up. Fang Yan suddenly began to miss home. He missed his beloved parents. Thank you, Dad, Mom. Thank you for giving me such a beautiful appearance. It was good to be handsome. Although he couldn't use his face to swipe a credit card at the bank, but it was easy to gain the support of female students. As an idle teacher, Fang Yan felt that his life was completely stress-free. Huang Haoren sneered and said to the girls, I said it before. If I test him on 3 questions, he can also test me on 3 questions. If he finds it difficult, then he can use this question to test me. Everyone fell silent. A bookworm was truly terrifying. He could even recite the complete Tao Te Ching. In this world, what could stop them from advancing? Are you sure you want to test me on this question? Fang Yan looked at Huang Haoren calmly and asked in a gentle voice. Talented people could always easily gain the respect of others. To be honest, Fong Yan originally had some dissatisfaction with Wang Haoren. The other students were conquered by his domineering aura and accepted the arrival of a new teacher without a word. Why was he the only one who had a big mouth? Why are you my teacher? Look at how low the standard of this question was. It made people unhappy when they heard it. Now, Fong Yan forgave Wang Haoren and even had a good impression of him. As a student who could recite the entire Tao Te Ching, he had the qualifications to be more arrogant. Profound knowledge of literature, a character with flesh and blood, a personality that wouldn't easily compromise with reality. He had what many students lacked. If everyone in the 9th class was like Wang Haoren, Fong Yan wouldn't have the face and qualifications to stay as a teacher. Because of the existence of Wang Haoren, Fong Yan found the value of his trip. Not bad. Wang Haoren looked at Fong Yan firmly on the stage. If you find it difficult, I will recite it word for word. Mr. Fong, I call you teacher now. You are qualified to be our teacher. But, this time, I want to win against you. Even if you are a teacher, I still want to win against you. Are you sure you don't want to change the question? Fong Yan liked his confidence and asked with a smile. No. Wang Haoren's attitude was firm. He only answered with one word. Well. Fong Yan stomped a few steps on the podium and said, "This question is too simple. Let's make it more difficult. I will recite Laozi's 5,000 writings backwards." Fong Yan cleared his throat and recited loudly, "Words are not beautiful. Beautiful words are not believed. Those who are good do not argue. Those who argue are not good. Those who know are not knowledgeable. Those who are knowledgeable do not know. Those who are knowledgeable do not accumulate. They think that people are more and more. That there are more and more people. The way of heaven is beneficial but not harmful. The way of saints does not compete. A small country with few people. Even if there is a weapon, it is not used. Even if the people die again, it is not far away. Even if there is a boat, it is not used. Even if there is an armor, it is not used. Make the people unite and use it. Be willing to eat, wear beautiful clothes, live in peace, enjoy the customs. Look at each other across the country, the chickens and dogs can hear each other, the people do not come in contact until they die. Fong Yan recited while writing on the blackboard. Lines of beautiful cursive script flowed out from the bottom of his hand like mercury, creating a wonderful rhythm with his voice. He recited faster and faster. His hands moved faster and faster, the chalk rubbing against the blackboard made a clicking sound. The incantation was clear and carried with it an awe-inspiring righteousness, the calligraphy was elegant and smooth, the reciter, the blackboard writer, and the 1,000-year-old classic, Tao Te Ching, merged into one. He was Li Bai's 100 drinking poems, he was a beautiful youth dancing in the bamboo sea, he was Ji Kang's Guangling San before his execution. Any kind of artistic expression to the extreme could exude a soul-stirring and conquering beauty. The Tao can be said, but it is not the Tao. The name can be named, but it is not the name. The nameless beginning of heaven and earth. The name is the mother of all things. Therefore there is no desire to observe its wonders. Often there is desire to observe its wonders. These two come from the same source but have different names, both are mysterious. The mystery of the mystery, the door of all wonders. Finally, when he finished reciting the first sentence of the Tao Te Ching, the chalk in his hand broke because he used too much force. The youth's smile was clear and bright, his posture wild. The sunlight outside the window was warm, smearing a layer of gold on his body. At this moment, he was like a god. Silence. Then, all the students stood up. Clap, clap, clap. The applause was like a clap of thunder, the corners of their eyes glistening with tears. Chapter 7. So cool. He was so handsome that bubbles were popping. That was what all the students in the 9th class thought. Before this, no one had thought that ancient literature, which was boring to them, could be presented in such a cool and spectacular way. Was this the national culture that they had abandoned? Was this the antique that they were unwilling to talk about or look at? If I could do this, how many girls would I be able to pick up? Many boys secretly thought to themselves. Thinking of the beautiful and lascivious future, they looked at Fang Yen with deep love. What a good teacher, they thought to themselves. The school really takes care of them. Huang Haoren's eyes were also red. He took off his glasses again and wiped the corners of his eyes with a cloth. Then, he put on his glasses and walked to the middle of the aisle. He bowed deeply to Fang Yen and said, "Mr. Fang, I lost. I'm convinced of my loss." Fang Yen looked at him with a smile and said, "Isn't it too early to admit defeat?" To be honest, if Huang Haoren had other problems, or if he had to memorize another ancient text, Fang Yen really wasn't sure that he could memorize it. However, he actually asked for Tao Te Ching. Fang Yen was born in a Tai Chi family. His father, who was an old pedant, couldn't practice martial arts, but he pinned the hope of the family's martial arts revival on his precious son. Fang Yen also worked extremely hard, but he met Yi Rou, the rare freak of the Yi family in 100 years. Therefore, he could only fight and lose again and again. She knocked out his front teeth, broke his hair, and beat him until he lay on the ground crying for his parents. Fang Yen really couldn't imagine how she would trample on him this year, so he simply left his books and ran away from home. His father, Fang Yixing, not only forced him to practice martial arts, but he also forced him to be well-versed in both literature and martial arts. He had been reading extensively under his father's guidance since he was a child, and Tao Te Ching, which was known as the highest classic of Taoism, was the 5th book that Fang Yen first read. In order to comprehend all things and improve the Taiji realm, Fang Yen read and thought about it every night, dissecting it word by word. Therefore, when he heard that Huang Haoren's 3rd question was to recite the Tao Te Ching, he really had the urge to laugh out loud. He was impulsive, but he didn't laugh out loud. Instead, he boasted that he would recite the Tao Te Ching backwards. The performance was perfect, and the effect was amazing. Seeing their fanatical gazes, Fang Yen secretly gave himself 32 thumbs up in his heart. Huang Haoren looked at Fang Yen in confusion, not understanding what he meant by that. "We've agreed that you'll give me 3 questions, and I'll give you 3 questions, Fang Yen reminded. "Don't tell me you've already forgotten." "Teacher, there's no need for the test, right?" "Huang Haoren definitely can't beat you," a lively girl shouted loudly. "That's right, I always thought that Huang Haoren was a top student, but now I realize that Mr. Fang is the flower of the top students." A naughty boy said that Huang Haoren was no match for Fang Yen. "Mr. Fang, do you have a girlfriend?" Was he preparing to attack? Hearing that Suing asked Fang Yen if he had a girlfriend, all the students in the class laughed out loud. Suing was a cute girl with an oval face. After asking this question, she was embarrassed. However, seeing that all the students in the class were laughing at her, she angrily rolled her eyes and said, "I like Mr. Fang, so what? If you don't like him, don't fight with me." "We won't fight, we don't like men," a boy said deliberately. Seeing them laughing and joking, Fang Yen also felt comfortable in his heart. This was the taste of youth, this was the smell of freedom, this was a carefree life. It was really good to be a teacher. It couldn't be better not to be beaten. After they joked for a while, Fang Yen looked at Huang Haoren and said, "You have to finish what you started. What do you think? How can you know that you will lose until the last moment?" Huang Haoren understood what Fang Yen meant and said seriously, "I'm willing to accept Mr. Fang's test." Fong Yan nodded with satisfaction and said, "For the first question, other students can also rush to answer it. For every question that you successfully answer, I will add one more point for you during the test." The moonlight in front of the bed is a famous sentence by Li Bai. What does the bed refer to? The fence on the wall. When the other students were still thinking, Huang Haoren had already said the answer. The knowledge of the top student was indeed extraordinary. For thousands of years in the Ci garden, a group of beauties competed for beauty, blooming a female flower. Which talented woman in history is this sentence talking about? Li Qingzhao, a chubby girl, answered in a loud voice. Because she was too anxious, her voice became a bit sharp. Her face was flushed, looked at Fong Yan and said, "I like Li Qingzhao the most. What's your name?" Fong Yan walked in front of the girl, looked at her and asked. "Wang Fong." "Congratulations Wang Fong, you got it right. In the next test, I will add one more point to your test paper." "Thank you, Mr. Fong," Wang Fong said happily. Seeing Wang Fong could have such an intimate conversation with the new Mr. Fong, the other girls were envious. Everyone secretly made up their minds to be the first to answer the next question. No one knew whether it was intentional or unintentional, but Fong Yan's actions suddenly aroused the enthusiasm of the students to learn, and let everyone follow his train of thought. This was the necessary quality of an excellent teacher, or the ability to control the field. The third question, which is also the last question. Fong Yan glanced at the whole audience and said, "Who can recite the complete disciple rules?" No one answered. Fong Yan looked at Huang Haoren and asked, "Can you?" "Yes." "Why not?" "Because." Huang Haoren hesitated for a moment and said, "I can only recite it straight." Fong Yan really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Because I recited the Tao Te Ching backwards, so you must recite the disciple rules backwards?" "Recite," Fong Yan said with a commanding tone. Huang Haoren nodded his head and said, "Disciple rules, sage's teachings. First, filial brother, second, sincere faith." When Huang Haoren finished reciting, Fong Yan took the lead to applaud and said, "Not bad, very good. Only a few words are wrong, and the order of 2 sentences is reversed. Knowledge is not magic. Do you have to play tricks to achieve it? At your current age and stage of education, you should be proud to be able to do this." "Thank you, teacher," Huang Haoren said happily. "It proves that you can graduate from primary school," Fong Yan said. Huang Haoren's face turned purple and he wanted to die. The other students wanted to die even more. Huang Haoren had only graduated from primary school. What level were they? Kindergarten. You're not convinced. Fong Yan took a panoramic view of their expressions and said with a smile, "In fact, the disciple rules was indeed a children's primer. You don't deny this, right? Mr. Fong, you can't blame us. Nowadays, the school always asks us to recite this and that, but never the disciple rules. Besides, it's not a test. It's useless for us to recite it. Indeed, you can't be blamed." Fong Yan agreed with the student. "It's not a test, so you don't need to recite it. However, this doesn't mean that the disciple rules is useless. Our ancestors used to say that we should cultivate our moral integrity, govern the country, and pacify the world. First, we should cultivate our moral integrity, then we are qualified to pacify the world. Nowadays, people are rushing to pacify the world from the beginning, so cultivating our moral integrity is delayed. The disciple rules is for us to cultivate our moral integrity. Read it and think about it. It's infinitely useful. But it doesn't matter. From today on, I will take you to appreciate the 5,000 years of national classics of Hua Xia and familiarize you with the legends of those great figures in history. Drink good wine, know heroes, look at beautiful women, and make friends with all the people we admire and respect. Whether he is Li Bai or Du Fu, whether he is Li Shishir or Lu Rushi. Teacher, Li Shishir and Lu Rushi are both prostitutes. Who said that? Fang Yan turned around angrily, stared at the boy with acne on his face, and said, they are famous actors. Isn't it more elegant to say it like this? Fang Yan sat down on a student's desk and said confidently, to be honest, I'm really envious of your luck to have a man like me as your teacher. Don't laugh, we're in class. Ha ha ha, everyone laughed even louder. This teacher is too funny. Bang! The back door of the classroom was knocked open, and 3 students rushed in with their arms around each other's shoulders. Stop, Fang Yan shouted. Shen Guodong looked at Fang Yan on the podium with drunken eyes and asked, who can tell me, who is this guy? He looks a little unfamiliar. Fang Yan. Fang means square, and Yan means 2 fires, Fang Yan answered himself. This class's language teacher. Oh. It turns out to be Mr. Fang. Shen Guodong hiccuped, waved to Fang Yan, and said, Mr. Fang, I will treat you to a drink some other day. Fang Yan smelled the strong smell of alcohol in the classroom, frowned, and said, you 3, get out of here. Come back to class when you sober up. Crack! Shen Guodong kicked the chair in front of him away with a glare. He pointed at Fang Yan and scolded, the one with the surname Fang, don't be ungrateful. When I'm happy, you are teacher Fang. If you make me unhappy, you are a pile of shit. Ha ha ha, a pile of shit. Shen Guodong's 2 followers, Li Yang and Chen Tao, laughed and echoed. Fang Yan's eyes were slightly cold, and the smile on his face became cold. Here comes the troublemaker. According to the rules of Jianghu, both sides should be masters of their own sects, and the winner would be the king. Fang Yan decided to send himself. Chapter 8. A teacher's job was to teach and answer questions. There was one more thing that Han Yu was too embarrassed to say, beat up students. Look at these literati. They didn't say what they should say and always liked to mislead the audience. If a student behaved like a hooligan, he or she was a hooligan. First hooligans, then students. Beat them up. Fang Yan had seen some movies about teachers. In those movies, bad students flirted with girls, drank, and slashed people. He just laughed it off and didn't take it to heart. However, his current identity was a glorious and great teacher who had to work hard for the girls of Rosefinch Secondary and Luchaoga. He had the responsibility and obligation to strictly supervise and reprimand these bad students in his class. In fact, it was fine if they behaved like hooligans. Their parents didn't care, and Fang Yan could turn a blind eye to it. When they barged into the classroom drunk, they affected the normal learning of the other students and filled the class with the unpleasant smell of alcohol. The most intolerable thing was that they called Fang Yan a pile of sh*t in front of the whole class. Being called a pile of sh*t by a pile of sh*t, Fang Yan felt that he had been insulted twice as much. Fang Yan's jumping, reciting the sacred text of Tao backwards, and acting cute was effective. Seeing Shen Guodong insulting Fang Yan, some students couldn't stand it anymore. Shen Guodong, what are you doing? How can you talk to Mr. Fang like that? The top student Huang Haoren was the first to stand up. That's right, you're too much. You have no manners at all. Suing also felt that it was unfair. The smell of alcohol is so bad, get out, Shen Guodong sneered. He walked shakily to Huang Haoren, pressed his head, and threatened, little four eyes, do you believe that I'll make your head explode? Don't you dare. Huang Haoren was not convinced. Do you think I dare? As Shen Guodong spoke, he slapped Huang Haoren's head hard. Huang Haoren was a skinny student, and when he was slapped, his head hit the desk with a loud thud. When he raised his head, his glasses were cracked and his forehead was purplish red. "Ah!" the girls in the class screamed. "Shut up!" Zheng Guodong roared. "Who else dares to stand out? You'll end up like Huang Haoren." The class quieted down. All the students looked at Kong Guodong in surprise. It seemed that they were extremely fearful of him. Fang Yan sneered in his heart. It seemed that these guys were very prestigious. Fang Yan stepped down from the podium and walked towards the back door. Zheng Guodong stood beside Huang Haoren and stared at Fang Yan provocatively. Even Zheng Guodong's two followers, Li Yang and Chen Tao, didn't care about Fang Yan's identity as a teacher. They crowded behind Zheng Guodong with smiles on their faces and looked at Fang Yan proudly. Fang Yan stood in front of Zheng Guodong and said, "You're a student of Class 9. Class 9, Zheng Guodong. Go ask around. There's no one in Rosefinch Secondary who doesn't know my name." Zheng Guodong proudly announced his name. "I say, Teacher Twofold Fire, it said that a new official has to change his ways. But I advise you not to burn me first. I'm afraid that you'll burn yourself instead of others. You too are also students of Class 9. Fang Yan looked at Li Yang and Qin Tao and asked. "Of course we are. Otherwise, why would we be standing here?" The burly Qin Tao replied without a care in the world. "You guys are students of Class 9. As a language teacher of Class 9, I request that you guys, get out," Fang Yan said sternly as he looked at the three delinquents in front of him with a cold expression. "You guys are affecting the normal studies of other students. Is there an effect?" Zheng Guodong grinned as he scrutinized the other students and shouted, "Am I affecting you guys?" No one answered his question. Zheng Guodong laughed and said, "Teacher Two Fires, do you see that? They say that their studies are not affected at all. Because of our arrival, they are instead filled with the passion and desire to learn." Fang Yan was a little disappointed with the other students' cowardice or avoidance, but he also understood that he was new and didn't have deep ties with the students to the point where they would be willing to offend a bunch of bullies who would do anything just to protect him. He pointed at the door and said, "This is a language lesson. You're affecting my teaching. Get out." Zheng Guodong was enraged and scolded, "Say, are you really Teacher Two Fires or are you an idiot? Didn't you hear what I said clearly? When I'm in a good mood, I only acknowledge you as my teacher. If you anger me, you're just a pile of dog sh*t, a pile of stinky dog sh*t that will be stepped on and chased out of Rosefinch Secondary at any time. Unfortunately, I'm angry now. Get ready to scram out of Rosefinch. No one in this world can save you. Do you have hemorrhoids in your mouth?" Fang Yan stared at Zheng Guodong and asked seriously. "Why do you always have the stench of sh*t when you speak? People with literary talent would scold others viciously. Who asked them to have a rich vocabulary and vivid metaphors? F*ck, how dare you scold me?" Zheng Guodong flew into a rage out of humiliation. He wanted to retort, but he found that he really couldn't say anything more vicious than this. In extreme anger, he punched Fang Yan's left cheek. A student hitting a teacher was really not afraid of death. Fang Yan stretched out his right hand and drew a circle around Zheng Guodong's arm. Sweeping dust. Dong, aw. Li Yang covered his eye and screamed. He was just watching the show. How did this punch land on his eye socket? Zheng Guodong was stunned for a moment. He just thought that he drank too much and his limbs were not nimble. With a roar, he punched Fang Yan's chest again. Fang Yan drew a circle again and then pushed the back of his hand. Spreading phoenix tail. Bang! Chen Tao's chest was hit, and his body retreated continuously. Chen Tao and Li Yang were stunned. What was going on with their boss? Why did he specifically attack them? Why aren't you coming to help? Jing Guodong was drunk and hatred attacked his heart. He pounced on Fang Yan while shouting, "Today, I will tear this bastard apart." Chen Tao and Li Yang quickly stood up to help. They didn't dare to let Jing Guodong suffer. Thus, the whole class saw a magical scene. "I will kill you. You dare to poke my eye." Li Yang punched Chen Tao's face. "You bastard, you kicked my balls. I will fight you." Jing Guodong's nose was hit. "You dare to hit me, you dare to hit me." Jing Guodong chased after Li Yang and beat him up. Fang Yan was surrounded by 3 people, but he was still relaxed. From time to time, he would wave his hand and draw a circle. It was better than taking a leisurely stroll. On the surface, it seemed that the inelegant melee that was taking place had nothing to do with him. He was just an outsider who was in the game. "I thought they were good brothers. It turns out that 2 of them are spies." A student was stunned for a long time and said with infinite emotion. Chapter 9. Kong Guodong lay on the ground, panting. His nose was bleeding, and his eyes were red and swollen. He looked very embarrassed. His 2 good brothers, Li Yang and Chen Tao, gave him a few punches and kicks respectively in the face and body. After that, he was completely sober. Even though his family background was extraordinary, it was still against human ethics and the mainstream values of society for a student to beat a teacher. He was still a little scared. However, the fear was quickly replaced by shame and anger. It must be him. Kong Guodong thought in his heart. He was not a fool. How could he not know that there was something fishy about it? He knew Li Yang and Chen Tao. These 2 brothers would not beat him for no reason. Besides, Li Yang and Chen Tao were also lying beside him at this time. The 2 of them were more seriously injured than him. After all, he could attack the 2 of them unscrupulously, but Li Yang and Chen Tao were still very cautious when they attacked him. However, how did the second fire do it? He did not even see him make a move. Why were their punches and kicks all hitting their own people? Fang Yan squatted on the ground and asked, "Are you all right?" "Fang, you have guts." Kong Guodong gritted his teeth and roared. He had also been punched in the mouth. Speaking would aggravate his wound, causing him to grimace in pain. His hatred for Fang Yan became even stronger. "Don't doubt it. I will definitely marry a wife and have a few children in the future," Fang Yan said. "I have such good genes. It will be a loss for all mankind if I don't have a few children. If you dare to play with me, I will make you wish you were dead. Just you wait. Soon you will be kicked out of Rosefinch. Just you wait. You want to teach in Rosefinch? No way. You still have so much strength to speak. It seems that you are not hurt at all," Fang Yan said. He stood up and stared at Kong Guodong condescendingly. He shouted in a deep voice, "Drinking and fighting, roaring in the classroom, beating teachers and classmates. Are you still students? Are you still like a student? You are gangsters, criminals. I will propose to the school to punish you for your lawless behavior." Kong Guodong was so angry that he almost fainted. He struggled to get up from the ground, stared at Fang Yan viciously, and shouted in a hoarse voice, "Fang Yan. Fang, you will soon get your retribution. You will soon receive retribution." Li Yang and Chen Tao also got up. The 3 of them looked at Fang Yan with eyes full of mockery and sympathy. Then, they supported each other and walked out of the classroom. The previous fight between them was written off, and they became an unhappy family again. Fong Yan watched them leave, then turned to the students behind him and said, "These students are too much. Teacher, as your teacher, I have the responsibility and obligation to lead by example. I will use my actions to set an example for all of you. We must resolutely fight against the evil forces and rogue students," Fong Yan said with his head held high and chest puffed out, looking like he was ready to die a martyr. His father is a member of the school board. Huang Haoren covered his forehead and said in a low voice. Fong Yan's expression became stiff. He opened his mouth and said bitterly, "It's too late for me to catch up and apologize now, right?" No answer was the best answer. It seemed that it was really too late. Looking at the pot of Stairway to Heaven in the corner, Lu Chaoge was a little annoyed and angry. Did this guy really come to be a teacher? Why did a very influential school board member call her office to fire her and hold her criminally responsible when she was only in class for the first period? A teacher beating a student was extremely serious. If this matter was spread out, the impact on the school's reputation would be extremely bad. What era was it now? How could they punish students? Young people are still too impulsive. Lu Chaoge gently shook her head in her heart. Knock knock, someone knocked on the door of the office. Lu Chaoge left the corner, walked to the desk and sat down. Then she shouted, "Come in." Fong Yan pushed the door and came in. He looked at Lu Chaoge with a face full of smiles and said, "Principal Lu, are you looking for me?" "Sit." Lu Chaoge pointed to the chair in front of her. She was going to have a good talk with him in a businesslike manner. She would criticize him and then let him go. It was also an explanation to the old principal. "Thank you, Principal Lu." Fong Yan walked to Lu Chaoge's big desk and pulled out a chair and sat down. "I didn't expect to meet Principal Lu so soon. It's really fate." Lu Chaoge felt a fire in her chest. She couldn't get it out and couldn't get it down. It made her very uncomfortable to hold it in. Why did she want to be rude to this bastard when she saw him? This is not fate. I have something to talk to you about. Lu Chaoge cut off his delusion with one sentence. "No, this is fate," Fong Yan said. "Principal Lu, think about it. There are more than 200 teachers in our school, and there are even more staff in the office. Why did Principal Lu look for me instead of them? If this is not fate, what is it?" Lu Chaoge forcibly suppressed the impulse to drive him out immediately and went straight to the topic. She said, "Someone reported to me that you had a violent conflict with the students. Is that true?" Fong Yan sighed softly and said, "Principal Lu, to tell you the truth, before I took this job, I thought that I would encounter such a thing. I've already made sufficient mental preparations. The students are still young. It is easy for young people to lose control of their emotions and do some impulsive things. This is inevitable. A philosopher once said that even God can forgive the mistakes made by young people. Although I am not as broad-minded as God, I know in my heart that I should be more tolerant of my students. Mr. Fong, I can accept whatever they do to me. After all, I am their teacher. I am going to have a good talk with them later and let them realize their mistakes. Teacher Fong Yan, Principal Lu, you don't have to call me to your office to comfort me. I am a man. I can still bear this kind of thing. Although they wanted to hit me, I did not fight back when they hit or scolded me." Fong Yan. Lu Chaoge wanted to jump up and scold him. This B***starred actually started praising himself. "Principal Lu, let bygones be bygones. However, from this matter, we must also learn a lesson. Those students who have made mistakes should be criticized and educated. Don't expel them easily. They are just small hooligans now. If we expel them into society, they will become big hooligans. In school, they can only harm me. But in society, they will harm more people. Fang Yan. You shut up. Lu Chaoge slapped the table. Fang Yan looked at Lu Chaoge in astonishment. This woman. Can't we talk it out? Why is she so angry? Phew, Lu Chaoge heaved a sigh of relief and finally found a chance to speak. Fang Yan, someone accused you of physically punishing students. Is that true? Lu Chaoge stared at Fang Yan with sharp eyes and asked in an unfriendly tone. Chapter 10. What? Fang Yan couldn't believe his ears. Keep pretending. Keep pretending. Lu Chaoge laughed coldly in her heart. She picked up the teacup in front of her and took a sip. She looked at Fang Yan's acting with great interest and said, Someone has complained that you beat up a student. Is this true? Something like that actually happened? Fang Yan looked heartbroken and couldn't accept it. How is that possible? I'm a teacher. How could I beat up my own student? That's the information I received. Fang Yan, you have the responsibility to give me an explanation. In addition, the complainant wants you to be held criminally responsible. Fang Yan's face was ashen and his heart was like dead ashes. He said with great exhaustion, I didn't expect it to be like this. I didn't expect it to be like this. I tried my best to protect them and protect them from harm. I thought that was what a good teacher was like, a qualified teacher. I didn't expect them to treat me like this. I'm very sad, but I feel even more pain. Why are students like this nowadays? Don't they have any sense of responsibility? Don't they know how to be grateful? What kind of behavior is this? This is Mr. Donghua and the wolf. I, the poor Mr. Donghua, encountered a bunch of ingrates. Teacher Fang Yan. Fang Yan, don't get agitated. Lu Chaoge tried to calm Fang Yan down. What's the truth? What's going on? It's like this. Fang Yan licked his lips and said, It's a long story. Can I have a cup of water? You sit, I'll pour it myself. Lu Chaoge felt very innocent. She didn't even prepare to get up. Fang Yan ran to pour a cup of water and brought it to Lu Chaoge. He asked, Do you have tea leaves? Give me a few. I'm used to drinking it. Plain water is tasteless. Lu Chaoge looked at him for a few seconds. Then, she took out her tea can from the drawer and tossed it over. Fang Yan opened the canister and smelled it. He clicked his tongue in praise. Good tea. This year's newly produced Yuqian Longjing only had small sprouts, which were hard to find even with money. The one who stir-fried the tea is also an expert. It's neither burnt nor tender, just right. Lu Chaoge looked at Fang Yan in surprise. She thought to herself that he was an expert in tasting tea. Fang Yan picked up a few tea leaves and threw them into his disposable teacup. He returned the tea can to Lu Chaoge and asked, Where were we? Yes, the one who stir-fried the tea is an expert, it's neither burnt nor tender. Lu Chaoge tapped the table with her fingers and said, I didn't ask you to come here to have tea with you. Someone accused you of beating a student. You need to give me an explanation. Yes, yes. It's about this. Fang Yan said. You're making a horse out of a deer. I feel like I'm being wronged. Ha! This matter isn't about a teacher physically punishing a student, but a teacher being beaten by a student. Fang Yan glanced at Lu Chaoge arrogantly and coldly and said, You definitely can't believe it, right? Before today, I couldn't believe it either. Rosefinch Secondary is one of the best private high schools in Huaxia. I came here because of its reputation. I want to dedicate my youth and body to this famous school and to you. If we have children in the future, Pa! Lu Chaoga's face turned red. She slapped the table and shouted angrily, "Who wants to have children with you?" "Don't misunderstand," Fong Yan said with a wave of his hand. "I mean, if I have children in the future, you have children, and we all have children. I'll send my children to Rosefinch Secondary to study. As a parent, I want my children to receive the best education. However, Rosefinch Secondary is too disappointing. A student hitting a teacher is against human ethics. It's simply intolerable." "Who hit you?" Lu Chaoga's chest was heaving up and down violently. She knew that she was being teased by this guy, but there were no loopholes in his words. Even if she wanted to pursue the matter, there was no evidence that could be used against her. It would only make her more embarrassed. 3 students from Class 9, Xingguodong, Li Yang, and Qin Tao. The 3 of them skipped class to drink and barged into the classroom drunk. I told them to come in after they sobered up, and they started cursing. They said that when they were happy, they recognized me as their teacher, and when they were unhappy, I was a pile of sh*t. Am I sh*t? I'm not. I'm not sh*t, but they called me sh*t. That's cursing. Lu Chaoga was silent. The school director called and said that his son and 2 other students were being bullied by the new teacher, and that the teacher beat them up without saying a word. Now, his son was seriously injured and was receiving treatment at the school's infirmary. To make matters worse, Li Yang was the school director's son, and Qin Tao's father, Qin Dahai, was the math teacher and homeroom teacher of Class 9. If all 3 parties insisted that Fong Yan hit them, Fong Yan's side would be at a great disadvantage. "What evidence do you have?" Lu Chaoga asked. "Evidence? What evidence do I have?" Fong Yan said angrily. "I'm the evidence, and so are the students who beat me up. The whole class is the evidence. They opened their mouths to curse me, and a student defended me and got his forehead smashed. His glasses were also broken. These are all evidence. But the 3 students seemed to be seriously injured as well." Lu Chaoga raised her doubts. "They originally wanted to hit me, but I don't know what happened, but they started fighting amongst themselves. Then they started fighting in front of the whole class. I couldn't even stop them." Fong Yan shook his head. "These students. Why are they so uncultured?" Lu Chaoga looked at Fong Yan and asked, "Do you know the identity of Xingguodong's father?" "Identity? What identity?" Fong Yan asked doubtfully. "In front of the teacher, they only have one identity, and that is the student's father. Do I have to be lenient just because his father is the principal, vice principal, or the school doctor? No, I can't do it. My conscience won't allow it, and my professional ethics won't allow it." "Do you have such a thing as professional ethics?" Lu Chaoga secretly thought in her heart. Fong Yan seemed to understand something and asked nervously, "What is the identity of Xingguodong's father?" "Our school's school director, the biggest investor," Lu Chaoga said. Fong Yan puffed out his chest and said unyieldingly, "No wonder Xingguodong is so arrogant and condescending. It's another real case of, my father is Li Gang. Comrades ruin friendships, young ladies ruin beauties, and unscrupulous fathers ruin children." Lu Chaoga looked at Fong Yan and asked, "What are you going to do?" "I believe that Principal Lu will give me justice." "I never doubted that," Fong Yan said. Lu Chaoga hated him in her heart. "How can you push this kind of trivial matter to a woman like me?" However, Lu Chaoga really couldn't get away. She was the vice principal in charge of the school's personnel, and whether Fong Yan stayed or left was mainly up to her. From Fong Yan's explanation, Lu Chaoga knew that he was in the right. Besides, she also knew what kind of person Principal Zhang's son was. The school's 3 playboys, this group was famous in Rosefinch Secondary. But now Principal Zhang's son was beaten. If she didn't give them an explanation, Principal Zhang would definitely not let it go. After thinking for a while, Lu Chaoga made up her mind and said, "White is white, black is black. I will investigate this matter clearly, and whoever should bear the responsibility, will bear the responsibility." I knew it. Fong Yan was very happy. Know what? Rose Finch has a justice bow, impartial and incorruptible. What did you say? Lu Chaoga's face darkened. You're not as black as him, Fong Yan hurriedly explained. He's not as white as you. Chapter 11. Rose Finch Secondary. A small conference room that was rarely open to the public. Fong Yan must be fired, a middle-aged man with a flushed face said calmly. This kind of teacher is a disgrace to our Rosefinch Secondary. If the media knows that a teacher in Rosefinch Secondary punishes a student, it will be a heavy blow to our Rosefinch reputation. Which parent would be willing to send their child to our Vermilion Bird Middle School to study? If this matter isn't handled well, it will bring immeasurable damage to our school. The person who spoke was the director of Rosefinch Secondary, Jing Tiancheng. He wasn't usually in charge of school affairs, but he had to be present when there were important decisions to be made. Firing a teacher who hadn't been officially promoted was a small matter to him. However, because this matter involved his son, he specially came to organize this meeting. Speaking of this, he raised his head and glanced at Lu Chaoga who was sitting across from him. If it wasn't for this woman's insistence, if Lu Chaoga had settled the matter immediately after he made the phone call, he wouldn't have needed to go through so much trouble to organize this meeting. This woman was really arrogant. It seemed like he had to find an opportunity to pressure her. The Queen of Education of America seemed to have not fully adapted to the national conditions of Huaxia. I agree, a tall and thin middle-aged man wearing a pair of gold-rimmed glasses said. He was the school's director of education, Li Mingqiang, a hardcore follower of Jing Tiancheng. Our school motto is unity, liveliness, diligence, and kindness. We have always been committed to improving the personal qualities of the students. However, we can't neglect the strict requirements of the teachers. If the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. If the leading teachers are all such low-quality people, how can we be so strict with our students? I suggest that this kind of violent teacher must be dealt with in a timely and accurate manner. Remove him from the teaching staff and report him to the police for criminal responsibility. This will serve as a warning to the rest and also serve as a warning to the teachers of Rosefinch Secondary. This kind of mistake should only be made once. It mustn't be made again. I also agree with Mr. Zhang and Director Li's proposal. This kind of thing must not be tolerated. Agreed. Lu Chaoga watched coldly as these people banded together to persecute a new teacher. She couldn't suppress the anger and sorrow in her heart. Lu Chaoga had already found out what had happened through her own channels. It was clearly their child who had made a mistake, so why was it the teacher who had been bullied who had to leave? What kind of world was this? Good people don't get rewarded, and bad people run rampant? I don't agree. Lu Xiaoga suddenly stood up and said in a firm and unyielding manner. Teacher Fong Yan didn't do anything wrong, he shouldn't have been expelled by us. If we kick an innocent teacher out of the school, how can our school stand up? How are we going to answer to the 232 faculty members of Rosefinch Secondary? How are we going to explain this to the students who witnessed the whole thing? No one had expected Lu Chaoga's counterattack to be so fierce. This woman. Did she take the wrong medicine? Or could it be that she had some sort of intimate relationship with that teacher whose surname was Fong? Nothing wrong. He beat up his own student and sent him to the hospital. That's not wrong. Li Mingqiang sneered. Principal Lu, you really know how to tolerate your subordinates. That's because the students fought and got hurt. They also injured our classmate, Huang Haoren. Lu Chaoge argued. Nonsense. As far as we know, Xing Guodong and Li Yang and Qin Tao have a close relationship. They even had lunch together before entering the classroom. How could they fight and get hurt? That's right. It must be Fang Yan who did it, but he pushed the responsibility to the students. This kind of irresponsible teacher must be removed from the teaching team. It's a disgrace to us. Then let's do a body check, Lu Chaoge said. What? Everyone looked at Lu Chaoge in confusion. How to do a body check? Lu Chaoge hesitated a little and said, since you're sure that it was teacher Fang Yan who did it, then there must be teacher Fang Yan's fingerprints on the injured students. We'll do a body check on the injured students. If there are really traces of teacher Fang Yan on them, teacher Fang Yan is willing to resign. To be honest, Lu Chaoge didn't have much confidence in proposing this solution. He believed that Fang Yan didn't hit the students, but there must have been some physical contact during the collision, right? If they really found Fang Yan's fingerprints on the 3 students, would they really let Fang Yan resign? However, this solution was proposed by Fang Yan himself. He was full of confidence in himself, and the current situation wouldn't give Lu Chaoge any more choices. Then let's do a body check. Xing Tiancheng made a decision. Qin Dahai stood in the classroom and glanced at the whole class sternly. He said, "This is too outrageous. Is there any justice for a teacher to hit a student? What era are we living in? How can a teacher rely on corporal punishment to discipline students? This isn't just incompetence, it's simply shameless." The class was silent. Everyone lowered their heads and didn't dare to look at Qin Dahai's eyes. Qin Dahai was very satisfied with his dignity. His voice was a little gentler. He said, "The new language teacher, Fang Yan, beat up 3 students, Xing Guodong, Li Yang, and Qin Tao. The school already knows about it. They're having a meeting to discuss this matter. The school's decision is to fire Fang Yan and pursue his criminal responsibility." Hua, hearing that Fang Yan was going to be fired, there was some commotion in the class. Although it was Fang Yan's first day of class, he had already attracted many students with his erudition and humor. This was a very fun and approachable teacher. They didn't want to be separated from him. "Quiet!" Qin Dahai shouted. The students immediately went silent. Qin Dahai was the math teacher and class teacher. He controlled their life and death. Anyone who does something wrong has to bear the responsibility. The teacher is no exception. Shouldn't he be punished for beating a student to the hospital? Qin Dahai said sternly. Mr. Fang is right. Huang Haoren said aloud. Qin Dahai's eyebrows twitched. He said, "Whether Mr. Fang is wrong or not, what you say doesn't count. What I say doesn't count. The school has the final say. The school has made a decision. No one can change it. I advise the students here to calm down. Know what to say and what not to say. We still have a long time to get along." Fang Yan left, but Qin Dahai was still there. Who dared to offend their class teacher for a teacher who was about to leave? Does anyone have anything to add? Qin Dahai asked. No one spoke. Everyone avoided looking at him. This class is self-study. Qin Dahai walked down the podium and walked toward the door. Huang Haoren, come out. Chapter 12. Huang Haoren's head hung low with a piece of white gauze on his forehead. After class, his classmates sent him to the school's infirmary. After an examination, his forehead was only slightly bruised. It wasn't a serious injury. Qin Dahai looked at the wound on Huang Haoren's head and asked with concern, Huang Haoren, is your head okay? It's okay, Huang Haoren said in a low voice. Sigh, Teacher Fong Yen is really too much. How could he be so careless? Nowadays, every family only has one child. They hold him in the palm of their hand, afraid to drop him, afraid to melt him in the mouth, afraid to bump into him. Yet, he just came today and beat someone up like this. It really hurts my heart to think about it. It wasn't Teacher Fong Yen who hit me. Huang Haoren said. Huang Haoren. The smile on Chen Dahai's face disappeared. His gentle voice also became cold. It was Teacher Fong Yen who hit you. He originally wanted to hit Jing Guodong, but he accidentally hit you. It's not like that. Huang Haoren clenched his teeth and insisted. Chen Dahai was silent. His eyes were like knives that scraped Huang Haoren's face. In middle and high school, there weren't many students who dared to disobey their teachers. Huang Haoren, in front of me, you're still a child, but you're not young anymore. As a high school student, you should think like an adult. Chen Dahai tried to persuade him. You can't go wrong listening to the teacher, right? Do you think the teacher will harm you? Huang Haoren kept his mouth shut and didn't answer. Huang Haoren, you're a smart child. You entered Rosefinch Secondary with excellent grades. Your parents must have high expectations for you, right? You should know how to choose, right? Don't worry, I'll take good care of you in my math class. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask. You can do it at any time. Teacher Chen will give you some private time. Chen Dahai patted Huang Haoren's shoulder and said, Teacher Fong Yen will definitely leave. You are the temporary language class representative. When the new language teacher comes, I will ask him to help you become a permanent teacher. Don't forget, I'm your class teacher. I do have that right. With that, Chen Dahai turned around and left. Huang Haoren's expression was extremely ugly. He clenched his fists tightly and said in a voice that only he could hear, but, wrong is wrong, Principal Liu, I think your hairstyle suits you very well. It's elegant and capable. It matches your identity and doesn't cover your beauty. Every detail of your clothes shows that you're a very tasteful woman. Fong Yen stood behind Lu Chaoga and whispered. Jing Jing stood next to Fong Yen. When he heard Fong Yan's shameless praise for Principal Liu, he was jealous and angry. What she was jealous of was how could such shameless words come out of his mouth so naturally. He was angry because he was warned not to try to flirt with Principal Liu. Did he not listen to me? Mr. Fong, aren't you worried at all? Jing Jing reminded him. Thank you for your concern, Director Zhang. Fong Yan turned around and thanked Jing Jing. A straight body is not afraid of a crooked shadow. I didn't hit anyone, so I'm not worried about my fingerprints on them. What if you touch them? Impossible. Fong Yan said. I'm not a casual man. I don't usually have physical contact with men. Fong Yan, I fought for you. Lu Chaoga said. I understand. Fong Yan took a step forward and leaned forward to get closer to Lu Chaoga. I can't repay Principal Lu's great kindness. Even if I marry you, I can't repay you. Fong Yan, Lu Chaoga and Jing Jing scolded him at the same time. Lu Chaoga glanced at Jing Jing coldly and said to Fong Yan, pay attention to the occasion when you speak in the future. Lu Chaoga just told Fong Yan to pay attention to the occasion when he spoke, but she didn't say that he couldn't say such words. The deeper meaning of it was worth pondering. Jing Jing also knew that he had made a mistake. He smiled embarrassedly and didn't dare to say anything more. Too much involvement would only make Lu Chaoga dislike him. It was not conducive to completing the task given by that master. Okay, Principal Liu. I'll tell you in private. Fong Yan promised. If you're fired today, I won't cry or show off. I don't need anyone to know. Was this guy reciting lyrics? Clang! The door of the laboratory was opened from the inside. Lu Xiaoge and all the people who were qualified to come forward gathered around and asked, Dr. Kai, have the results come out? How is it? Dr. Kai signaled everyone to keep quiet and said, after scientific and rigorous tests and comparisons in our laboratory, the fingerprints collected from the patients were compared with the fingerprints of the target suspect. How is it? Everyone looked at him expectantly. It doesn't match at all, Dr. Kai said. None of them were successful. Li Mingqiang asked, unwilling to give up. None of them, Kai Mingqiang said. After careful analysis and research, we found that the fingerprints on the 3 patients were left by each other. That is to say, they attacked each other. Li Mingqiang wanted to kill someone. Who asked you to add this sentence? Who asked you to add this sentence? Give me the report, Lu Xiaoge said. Dr. Kai handed the report to Lu Xiaoge. Lu Xiaoge took the report and read it. Then she raised the paper high and said to everyone present, now the truth is out. Can we remove the suspicion of teacher Fang Yan beating students? Li Mingqiang's face was livid. He said, this is only the first step of the investigation. We still need to ask the students of Class 9 about the specific situation. They were all on the scene and witnessed the incident. Besides, the teacher is also responsible for the students fighting in the classroom. If he can't handle such a thing well, can he still be a qualified teacher? Our Rosefinch Secondary is an elite school. We don't need such a mediocre teacher. I still suggest that we fire Fang Yan and hire a better person to be the language teacher of Class 9. Lu Xiaoge was about to speak, but Fang Yan magically appeared in front of her. He looked at Li Mingqiang with a guilty face and said, Director Li is right. As a teacher, I am responsible for the students' fight. I suggest that we only record a major demerit on these 3 students. Don't fire them. It's my fault for not managing them well. I should bear the main responsibility. All the people present were dumbfounded. Li Mingqiang almost roared out. Who said they were fired? Who said they were fired? Chapter 13. Lu Xiaoge understood and immediately said, skipping class to drink, making a scene in class, beating students, insulting teachers. The nature of these students' mistakes is very serious. Their existence will affect the reputation of Rosefinch Secondary and cause a very bad influence among the students. After a pause, she looked at Li Mingqiang and said, but, since Mr. Fang Yan took the initiative to intercede for these students and took the main responsibility. Director Li, I suggest that these 3 students should be punished with serious demerits. What do you think? Check again, maybe it's a misunderstanding. Li Mingqiang looked at Fang Yan with sharp eyes, as if he wanted to scan all the internal organs of this young language teacher. Mr. Fang Yan is still very responsible. He is also full of patience and tolerance for students. He is a very good teacher. We can rest assured that Class 9 will be handed over to Mr. Fang Yan. Li Mingqiang took the initiative to compromise. Li Mingqiang's attitude was not important, but he represented Jing Tiancheng behind him at this time. This attitude was very important. Lu Xiaoge nodded and said, I'll ask someone again to investigate the matter clearly. I will handle this matter fairly and justly. I believe that Principal Lu can handle it well. Li Mingqiang coldly dropped a sentence and turned to walk out of the hospital. The truth was out. Seeing Li Mingqiang leave, the others also followed him. Lu Xiaoge turned to look at Fang Yan and asked, How did you do it? Because I have walked through thousands of flowers, and not a single leaf touched my body, Fang Yan said. Mr. Fang Yan, I'm asking you a question very seriously. Principal Lu, I'm also answering your question very seriously, Fang Yan said. He really didn't lie. Tai Chi was originally about having a circle but not having a circle, having an extremity but not having an extremity. Using the force to fight without touching the body. There were some Tai Chi masters among the people who paid attention to not using their hands to fight. Using their hands was a disgrace. They didn't even need to use their hands to fight. Thinking about it, they felt that it was awesome and pretentious. Although Fang Yen couldn't beat the violent girl Yi Ro, it didn't take much effort to deal with these three drunk students who couldn't even stand steadily. Lu Chaoge just stared at Fang Yen without saying a word. She felt that she couldn't get a word from this guy. Even if she tried so hard to help him just now. Fang Yen knew that Lu Xiaoge didn't believe him and said, "Look into my eyes, look at me. Do you see my sincerity?" I saw a lump of eye wax. Lu Xiaoge was so angry that he turned around and left. Jing wanted to scold Fang Yen. But he knew it. Jing wanted to reprimand Fang Yen. However, when the words reached his mouth, he knew it was useless. He quickly chased after Lu Xiaoge. Jing followed Lu Xiaoge and said with a smile, "It's not worth it to offend Director Zhang and Director Li for a new teacher." Jing followed behind Lu Xiaoge and said with a smile, "It's not worth it to offend Director Zhang and Director Li for a new teacher." Jing followed Lu Xiaoge and said with a smile, "It's not worth it to offend Director Zhang and Director Li for a new teacher." What is worth it and what is not? Lu Xiaoge stopped and asked. I feel that it's not easy for Principal Lu to gain a foothold in the school. There's no need to rush into a head-on confrontation with them, Jing quickly explained. I don't think we should confront them head-on, Jing explained. They just want to protect their own children. Have they ever thought about what will happen to the other students if they succeed? I'll do what is right, and I won't do what is wrong. Lu Xiaoge sneered. They just want to protect their children. Have they ever thought about what kind of influence they will have on other students if they succeed? They can't even tell right from wrong. How can we expect them to have good character and integrity in the future? The national conditions in Huaxia are different from those in the United States. The sun represents day and the moon represents night. Bamboos have joints, and trees have tendons. Black is black, and white is white. This is the same in any country. This is Rosefinch Secondary, and I'm the vice principal of Rosefinch Secondary. I want them to be the same, and he must be the same, Lu Xiaoge said firmly. I can compromise on many things, but there are some things I'd rather bleed. Lu Xiaoge walked away with her head held high, leaving behind an unyielding expression and a graceful silhouette. The sound of her high heels hitting the ground was like a blow to the soul. Jing stood rooted to the ground. After a long time, he exhaled. This is the first time I feel that her domineering attitude isn't so annoying. After some thought, he clenched his teeth and cursed, "It's all Fang Yan's fault. I'll teach you a lesson." Jing Guodong, Li Yang, and Chen Tao stayed in the same ward. Their injuries weren't serious, but in order to frame Fang Yan, they changed their appearances. Li Yang's head was wrapped in white gauze, Chen Tao's left hand was in a cast, and Jing Guodong's eyes were purplish red. Jing Guodong wasn't pretending. His eyes were still burning from being punched by Chen Tao or Li Yang. That kid dared to offend us. We'll teach him a lesson, Chen Tao cursed. When we get out, I'm afraid we won't be able to find him. Li Yang laughed. When I came in, I called my dad. He said that a teacher like this isn't worthy of being a teacher. Since my dad said that, he can forget about staying in Rosefinch. My dad also said that he'll ask about this matter. Jing Guodong was playing a game on his phone. With Uncle Zheng, that kid is dead meat. Li Yang and Chen Tao looked at each other and laughed. The kid you're talking about is me, right? Fong Yen stood at the door of the ward and looked at the three people on the bed with a smile. Li Yang and Chen Tao were shocked. Jing Guodong wanted to jump up from the bed, but he didn't hold the phone firmly and it hit his eye, causing him to scream in pain. Why are you here? Li Yang asked warily. This bastard is a bit strange, as if he knows magic. They originally wanted to beat him up, but they didn't expect that the three of them would be in the hospital. Why is he here now? Is it because he knows that I'm going to be expelled from school, so before leaving, he sneaked in and beat the three of us up? Thinking of this possibility, Li Yang was even more afraid. He shouted outside, "Doctor, doctor! Nurse! Someone come, why can't I be here?" Fong Yan felt that the other person asked a very stupid question. I'm your teacher, and you're my students. My students are injured and hospitalized. What's wrong with me coming to see them? He pointed at Li Yang and said, Stop shouting. It's useless even if you scream your throat out. I'm your teacher, not a criminal who wants to molest you. What's there to be afraid of? Besides, your faces are natural tools to protect you from perverts. You're safe. Jing Guodong, Li Yang, and Chen Tao looked at each other and felt insulted. Fong Yan pulled a chair and sat beside Jing Guodong. He asked with concern, Are you okay? No. I'm fine, replied Jing Guodong. He didn't understand why this guy suddenly cared about him so kindly. Is he showing weakness and begging for mercy? Unfortunately, it's too late. I'm very sad to hear you say that. Fong Yan said with regret, Why don't you say that you have something to lie to me? Chapter 14. I'm sad to hear you say that. Why don't you say that you lied to me? Jing Guodong felt a sweetness in his throat and had the urge to vomit blood on the spot. He wanted to call him a B*TCH and was worried that all the B*cheese in the world would protest. You didn't leave? Jing Guodong asked angrily. Father clearly said that he would come forward to solve this matter. Why did this B*** still swagger into their ward? You mean leave Rosefinch? I wanted to leave, but the school leaders thought that I was knowledgeable and patient with students. It's too difficult to find a good teacher like me now. I think what they said makes sense. It's hard to refuse their kindness, so I decided to stay and dedicate my youth and body to this school. Youth? Body? Jing Guodong and the other two understood one thing. They would have to deal with him often in the future. Don't worry, don't be afraid. Fong Yan waved his hand generously and gestured for everyone to sit down. He said, I'm not the kind of man who holds grudges. Anyway, I've never suffered losses before. In terms of age, I'm your elder. In terms of status, I'm your teacher. What's wrong with letting me take advantage of you? Suffering losses is a blessing. If you suffer more when you're young, you'll be able to enjoy life like me in the future. As long as we can maintain this normal and healthy relationship, I believe that we'll live happily in the future. What do you think? Impossible. Jing Guodong's eyes were red like an enraged beast. Fong Yan, I'll say it here today. Either you leave, or we leave. Only one of us can stay in Rosefinch. That's right. Don't be complacent. We'll definitely drive you away. If you can't do it this time, there'll be a next time. If you can't do it next time, there'll be a next time. One day you'll be driven away. Are you done? Fong Yan asked. Get out. Jing Guodong pointed to the door and said. Do you think there's anyone in this world who would be willing to be a teacher for a bunch of B****? No. Fong Yan answered himself. So, can you understand how happy I am to hear you say that? Fong Yan smiled like a sly fox. To borrow a senior's words. My medical skills are not that cheap. No, my knowledge is not that cheap. Even after Fang Yan left the ward, Zheng Guodong, Li Yang, and Chen Tao were still in a daze. Zheng, why don't we switch shifts? Li Yang suggested. That's right. It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. In the future, when we become teachers, we'll beat the son of AB*TCH. Chen Tao said. Bang! Zheng Guodong punched the wall and roared, I'm not leaving. He wouldn't leave even if he died. If anyone wants to leave, it should be him. Fang Yan soon suffered from the other party's revenge. He looked at the small single room with rusty windows, black and moldy walls, and water seeping out from the ceiling. He asked, This is the teacher's dormitory. Rosefinch Secondary had a written rule that if a teacher needed to live on campus, the school would arrange a room for each single teacher. However, there was no specific rule on which room the teacher would be assigned to. When walking on campus, Fang Yan felt that the facilities of Rosefinch Secondary were quite good. Lush greenery, a myriad of purple and red. There was a basketball court, a soccer field, a swimming pool, and a gym. The facilities were better than some second-rate or third-rate universities. The school was not short of money. However, when he came to his dormitory, he found that it was not the case at all. If all the teachers were arranged to live in such a room, wouldn't all the teachers in the school run away? Or is it just me? There was a big question mark in Fang Yan's heart. Yes, Shaoli said. Shaoli was a staff member of the school's logistics department. He was responsible for arranging Fang Yan's food and accommodation. As for who the head of the logistics department was, sorry, Fang Yan's rank was too low. He didn't even have the chance to meet the head. Other teachers live here too. Fang Yan stretched his head and looked outside. How come I don't see any other teachers here? Not only did he not see any other teachers, there was not even a shadow in the entire corridor. Could it be that all the teachers were busy with classes today? Other teachers don't live here. They have other arrangements, Shaoli said impatiently. Little brother, who's your brother? Shaoli said angrily. Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself? You think you're much older than me. Working in society, people were afraid of being called young. Being young didn't just mean that you were young, it also meant that you had no experience. In the future, if you didn't get a room, if you didn't get a promotion, you would forever be a little brother. Big brother, I just want to ask, why do other teachers live in other places, and I live here? Look, is this place livable? Not only is the room moldy, but it's also leaking water. Can you give me another room? Fang Yan pleaded softly. Shaoli was very satisfied with Fang Yan's attitude of calling him a big brother. Seeing that there was no one around, he asked softly, Did you offend someone? No. Fang Yan said. I just came to report today, how could I offend someone? Is it too late? Strange. Shaoli said. He couldn't imagine that a teacher on his first day of work had offended the school's top management. There are rooms in the teacher's area, why are you assigned to the handyman area? Handyman area. Fang Yan was stunned. Do you know who lives in this place? I don't know. Fang Yan shook his head. It seemed that the water here was really deep. Was this how those people showed their power to him? The security guard at the door, the cook in the cafeteria, and the boiler. Their rooms are better than yours. No one used to live in this room, and it has been used as a utility room. I don't know what happened, but you were assigned here. In order to make room for you, our logistics department specially sent 2 people over to empty the broken tables and chairs in the room. Isn't this bullying? Can you give me another room? Xiao Li shrugged and said, "This is arranged by the director himself. I don't have the right to decide. Unless the director says so, or you can find a leader with a higher rank than the director to speak for you. However, since the director did this, there must be a reason for it. You must have offended someone. This is too much." Fong Yan was angry and shouted, "Where does your director live?" Xiao Li was shocked and said, "What do you want to do? Don't you mess around." He told this to Fong Yan. If Fong Yan went to find trouble with the director, he would have to bear the consequences. "I'll go and give him some gifts," Fong Yan waved his hand and said in a heroic manner. Xiao Li almost choked to death by this answer. He stood there in a daze for a while, then he grinned. "You have a good understanding." Xiao Li gave a thumbs up to Fong Yan. Chapter 15. As a teacher of the people with integrity, Fong Yan would never give gifts to the leaders. Besides, even if he wanted to, he didn't have the money. When he ran away from home, he took some cash from the drawer. He didn't dare to take bank cards or credit cards with him, and he didn't dare to use them. With the power of the Fong family and the Yi family, if he dared to withdraw money from a bank card in this city, a large army would come to kill him the next day. After that, they would kill him. He could imagine the anger of Yi Ro and his father when he ran away from home during the annual contest. "Forget it. I'm not happy today. I'd better not think about these desperate things." It was not necessary to ask the director for help. Since he dared to do this, he must have been instructed by the higher-ups. "If I go to him, I will only humiliate myself." Is Fong Yan stupid? That's a stupid question. It's possible to ask a leader with a higher rank than the director for help. However, the old principal retired and didn't care about school affairs. He just came here today, and the only leader he knew was Lu Chaoga. Should I ask her for help? Fong Yan shook his head. Men are born to solve problems. How can a woman help them with everything? Fong Yan decided to solve this problem by himself. The way to solve this problem is... Damn it, I don't live on campus anymore. If they don't let me sleep here, I have my own place to sleep. What an unyielding man. Fong Yan would rather suffer losses than bow to the forces of evil. He was so touched by his own actions that he almost couldn't breathe. Fong Yan had a place to live. After he ran away from home, he rented a house in Huaqing. 500 yuan a month, 1 for 2, that's 1,500 yuan. He didn't have much money left in his pocket. For the first time in his life, he encountered a survival crisis. That was also the reason why Fong Yan wanted a room on campus. If the school approved it, he would talk to the landlady and see if he could get a refund for the rent. Originally, Fong Yan wanted to bargain or negotiate with the landlady. However, the landlady's words made him give up the idea. "My daughter has to pay tuition." Tractor Village. This was the urban village of Huaqing, and it was also the place where Fong Yan rented the house. In Huaqing, an international metropolis, there were people who drove colorful luxury cars, and there were people who lived in mansions that overlooked the mountains and the sea. There were countless luxury stores and feasts from different countries that cost tens of thousands of yuan. However, most of them were from the ant tribe who were tired and had dark circles under their eyes from working overtime. They took the subway and took the bus back to their rented house to reunite with their wives and children. It was only at this moment that they would smile without any scruples. In this small, cozy house, they were heaven. Fong Yan was not this kind of person in the past, but now he had joined their army. Fong Yan returned to the courtyard. The landlord's sister Li was washing vegetables in the courtyard and preparing to cook. "Xiao Fong, you're back." The landlord's sister Li greeted Fong Yan warmly. "I'm back," Fong Yen replied with a smile. Have you found a job? I've found it. So fast. Sister Li straightened her thick waist. Not bad, Xiao Fong. You found a job so quickly. The current employment situation is grim, and it's not easy for a new graduate to find a job. Think about it, without any work experience, which company would dare to hire you? The company can't afford to hire useless people. I'm luckier. Fong Yen smiled modestly. Yes, you're luckier. You've only just arrived, and you've already found a job today. In the past, there was a university student who rented my house, but he couldn't find a job for half a year. After half a year, he bought a bus ticket to go back to his hometown. I had to get the money from my family. The sister-in-law continued to wash the vegetables. Oh, what job are you looking for? A language teacher at Rosefinch Secondary. As Fong Yen spoke, he had already opened the door to his room. Rosefinch Secondary is a good school, and it's very famous. The sister-in-law praised. Her voice suddenly rose, and she asked in surprise, What? You're a teacher at Rosefinch Secondary? Yes. Fong Yen turned around and looked at her. Are you okay? Sister Li looked at Fong Yen from head to toe with a strange gaze, and asked again, Are you really a teacher at Rosefinch Secondary? Yes. Fong Yen understood what she was thinking. It was still because he was too young, which made people think that it was impossible for him to become a high school teacher. You're not lying. Fong Yen smiled bitterly and said, Sister Li, why would I lie to you about this? Amazing. Sister Li praised again and again, but her eyes were shining. That's amazing. Mr. Fong, go back to your room and rest for a while. You're not allowed to eat outside today. I'll cook a few more dishes. When your Uncle Jiang comes back, you two can have a few drinks. Sister Li, you don't have to be so polite. Fong Yen said. Wasn't this treatment too fast? Not only did the address change, but he was also treating her to a meal. No need to be polite. You can rent my house, this is also fate between our two families. In the past, when other tenants came over, I would also treat them to a meal. That's settled. I'll go prepare now. If you're hungry, I have bread at home. I'm not hungry. I'm not hungry yet. Fong Yen quickly said. Okay. Then wait for a while. I'll call Mr. Fong to eat later. Sister Li said. He opened the door and pressed the light. The room was suddenly brightened. There was a bed and a desk in the small room of less than 30 square meters. There was also a small bathroom in the room. The conditions were simple and crude, which couldn't be compared to his home. However, Fong Yen felt comfortable and satisfied. He had been sleeping soundly for the past few nights. He didn't even have a dream. Here, he didn't have any pressure. He could breathe the air freely. Fong Yen had originally planned to take a shower and settle his dinner outside. However, since Auntie Li had invited him, his dinner was already settled. After taking a shower, Fong Yen lay on the bed and read a book. He fell asleep unconsciously. In a daze, he felt someone pushing the door open and entering the room. He remembered that Sister Li said she would call him for dinner. He thought that he would pretend to get up when Sister Li called him for the second time. If he jumped up when she called him, it would make people think that he had been waiting for dinner. How embarrassing would that be? To his surprise, Auntie Li did not call for help. Instead, she approached him step by step. Ha! What does Sister Li want to do? Fong Yen was a little nervous. He was more nervous than when he met Yiro. No, he was as nervous as when he met Yiro. Could it be that Sister Li found me handsome and aroused her evil thoughts? So she wants to touch me when I am asleep. No, I can't let her succeed. Fong Yan made up his mind. His innocence couldn't be ruined by a fat waist. She reached out. Fong Yan felt that she reached out to him. He couldn't bear it anymore. He didn't have to bear it anymore. Fong Yan suddenly sat up on the bed as if he had just had a nightmare. Bang! Fong Yan's head bumped with another person's head. Ouch! It was a young girl's voice that moaned and screamed. What's going on? It's not Auntie Lee. Fong Yan thought it was a little strange. Fong Yan's heart was filled with guilt when she saw the face of the girl who was covering her head and glaring at her. I just wanted to touch you, didn't I? Why don't you be generous and let me touch you? What's the big deal? Are you all right? Fong Yan asked with concern. The girl was very hot-tempered. She pointed at Fong Yan and shouted, How dare you touch the butcher's daughter? Do you believe that my father will chop you to death? Chapter 16. How dare you touch the butcher's daughter? Believe it or not, my dad will chop you to death. This was the first sentence that Jiang Qin and Fong Yan said when they first met. Many years later, the two still laughed when they thought of this scene. Jiang Qin knew that the cottage in the yard was rented to someone else, but these days she left early and came back late, so she didn't see Fong Yan at all. When she just came back from school, her mother said to her sneakily, Honey, do you know who we rented the house to? Who? A person. That's not an ordinary person. Is it a Superman? Damn child, what are you talking about? Let me tell you, the young man who rented our cottage is a language teacher at Rosefinch Secondary. Jiang Qin pursed her lips and said, Isn't it just a teacher? What's so great about it? Why can't you understand? Li Guiying was anxious and poked her forehead with her finger. Didn't your teacher teach you to get close to the water tower first? Jiang Qin's eyes widened and said, No way. Mom, you want me to hook up with a teacher? Hook up? Screw you. Li Guiying raised the spatula and hit her head, scaring her into stepping back. Think about it, if we hire a teacher from Rosefinch Secondary to tutor you every day, you can also get into Rosefinch High next year, right? The Prime Minister's son is with the Prime Minister every day, but it doesn't mean he can be the Prime Minister, right? Jiang Qin retorted. I'm not going to find someone to tutor me. The school tutors us every day, and we can't even finish our homework. No, you have to listen to me on this. Li Guiying decided everything. Honey, you're already in the 3rd year of middle school. In another year, you'll be taking the high school entrance exam. This is the final sprint stage of the year. I don't need to say how precious time is, right? If you can't get into a good high school, how can you get into a good university? If you can't get into a good university, how can you get into a good job? Look at the life of college graduates, they can't even eat hot food, they eat instant noodles all day. That's because they're stupid. Don't tell me they don't know how to soak instant noodles and eat it. You little girl, do you believe that I won't hit you with a spatula? Li Guiying was really annoyed by her daughter, who had been spoiled since she was a child. She said, Anyway, I've already talked to Mr. Fong and invited him to tutor you in Chinese. You don't have a good foundation in Chinese, so this is a good opportunity. Do you know how important a point is during the college entrance examination? She neatly put the dish on the plate and said, I'll make another seafood soup. You go and invite Mr. Fong to dinner. Go by yourself. Are you going or not? If you don't go, you'll lose your allowance this month. I'll go, all right. After the above conversation between the mother and daughter, Jiang Qin was sent to call Mr. Fong for dinner. The door was unlatched, and light shone from inside. She gave the door a gentle push and it opened. Then, she saw Fang Yan, who was sleeping on the bed. Oh my God, it can't be. Jiang Qin's eyes widened. This teacher is too young, isn't he? Impossible, absolutely impossible. How can such a person become a high school teacher? Liar, he must be a liar, specializing in deceiving my mother, an uneducated and ignorant old woman in the city. Jiang Qin secretly labeled Fang Yan as a very unfriendly person in her heart. Of course, her understanding of her mother was even more maddening. She took out her cell phone from her pocket and prepared to take a photo of Fang Yan. Tomorrow, she would ask someone if there was such a teacher at Rosefinch Secondary. If there isn't, hee, my dad's butcher knife is not for show. Her cell phone's pixel was not good, and the photo taken from afar was too blurry. Therefore, she decided to walk closer. When Fang Yan suddenly jumped up, it really gave her a big fright. To make matters worse, she was taking the photo with her body bent down. Due to the shock, she lost her balance and leaned forward. Their heads collided fiercely. She only felt that there were golden flowers in her eyes, and the fire in her heart was rising. Her whole body was like a small stove that was about to burn. I didn't touch you. Fang Yan hurriedly explained. If Sister Li and her butcher husband misunderstood, it would be a big problem. This is not touching. Jiang Qin said, pointing to her forehead. It's all red. Only then did Fang Yan feel relieved. This touching was not that touching. When she said touching, it was just touching. When he said touching, it was harassment. I didn't touch. Fang Yan thought about it and said, I didn't touch on purpose. Look, my forehead is also red. If you are red, you deserve it. If I am red, you have to pay for it. This is too unreasonable, isn't it? This is my room. You didn't even knock on the door to enter my room. This is my room. I'm only renting it to you temporarily. Also, I knocked on the door. You didn't hear me. Fang Yan knew that the girl was lying. If someone knocked on the door, with his sensitivity, how could he not hear it? I asked you to pay for it. Did you hear me? The girl's voice was clear but domineering. Pay for what? Jiang Qin thought about it and had an idea. He said, you are not allowed to tutor me. What? Fang Yan was confused. You are so stupid. Jiang Qin rolled his eyes and said. Didn't you promise my mother to tutor me in Chinese? When we eat later, you can say that you are busy with work and may not have time to tutor me. Refuse this job for me. Understood. Fang Yan nodded and said. I will refuse it. That's great. Jiang Qin waved his fist happily. Great. Fang Yan was also happy in his heart. Seeing that Fang Yan was still looking at her, she glared and said, What are you looking at? My mother asked you to eat. Hey, who is a hey? I am not a hey. I said, I am a teacher. Why don't you respect me at all? I don't believe that you are a teacher. Jiang Qin said. Besides, even if you are a teacher, you are not my teacher. You don't teach me anything. Why should I respect you? You can't say that. Being a teacher is a great profession and a glorious team. I am not your teacher, but I am the teacher of other students. I'm the same as tens of thousands of teachers. We all contribute selflessly to the students. You should respect me and every student's teacher. Fang Yan tried his best to persuade her. Jiang Qin thought about it and said, You mean that other people's teachers are also my teachers? Yes. Fang Yan nodded. If you have a daughter in the future, will you give her money to spend? Yes. Fang Yan said. What kind of question was that? I am not your daughter, but someone else's daughter. As a father, you should pity all the daughters in the world. Jiang Qin stretched out her white and tender little hand to Fang Yan and said, "Give me 300 yuan to spend." "You don't want to. Isn't the profession of a father great? Isn't it a glorious team?" Jiang Qin looked at Fang Yan with disdain and pressed him step by step. "Don't provoke me." Fang Yan was angry. "What if I provoke you? I have no money to give you even if you provoke me." Fang Yan jumped up from the bed and quickly walked toward the door. "Hurry up and eat. We can't let the elders wait for too long." Jiang Qin giggled behind him and shouted to Fang Yan, "Hypocritical guy." Chapter 17. Mr. Fang, have a chicken leg. Mr. Fang, my pan-fried squid is the best. It goes well with wine. Teacher Fang, go ahead and eat. Don't stand on ceremony. Make yourself at home at sister-in-law's. Looking at the food piled up like a hill on the plate in front of him, Fang Yan knew that it would be difficult to fulfill the promise he made to Jiang Qin. "Thanks to you." Jiang Dai, the butcher husband of Sister Li, chuckled with a glass of wine in his hand. From time to time, he said to Fang Yan, "Mr. Fang, let's drink." Regardless of whether the glass of wine in Fang Yan's hand was gone or not, he was gone completely. Not a drop was left. He almost ran naked. Sister Li was businesslike, enthusiastic, and had the shrewdness of a woman from a village in the city. Jiang Dai was simple and honest. Except for, "Mr. Fang, let's drink," he had almost nothing in common with Fang Yan. Sister Li had a thick waist and round butt. Jiang Dai was chubby. He didn't look like a butcher, but more like a kind-looking hotel chef or a small restaurant owner. However, such a couple gave birth to a mischievous and very good-looking daughter. To be honest, Jiang Qin was really good-looking, except for Yi Ro. Bah, could Yi Ro be a woman? She had big eyes, thin eyebrows, a high nose, and cherry lips that made people full of appetite even without any rouge. She had delicate skin, an innocent expression, and long black hair that fluttered freely. She sat in front of her parents and ate seriously, just like a little princess from a village in the city. Every cute girl was a little princess in their family. The little girl's eyebrows were not fully grown yet, but there was a kind of charm in them. The charm was still subtle, but as she grew older, it was really hard to know what kind of enchanting and soul-stirring beauty she would blossom into. "Mr. Fang, have a piece of beef." "Pineapple beef, is that how you people in the north cook it?" As Sister Li spoke, she made some more contributions to the food hill in front of Fang Yan, making it look even taller and steeper. "Yes." Fang Yan nodded. "Mr. Fang, are the students of Rosefinch Secondary easy to teach?" Sister Li asked casually. "It's okay. I just went there." Fang Yan knew that the main topic was coming. Jiang Qin, who had been eating quietly, heard his mother's words and secretly winked at Fang Yan, reminding him to remember to keep his promise. Rosefinch Secondary is a famous school. The quality of the students there must be quite high, Sister Li said to herself. "Unlike our dearest, kiss. Mom." Jiang Qin blushed and said angrily, "My name is Jiang Qin." "Oh, right. My dear brother is Jiang Qin." Sister Li quickly corrected herself. Jiang Qin wished he could bury his head in the seafood soup in front of him. How could his mother call him by his nickname in front of an outsider? Furthermore, it was such a nickname that gave people a sense of intimacy. Jiang Qin didn't do well in primary school and only got into number 26 high school. Number 26 middle school is a good school, but there are so many good schools in front of it. It won't be easy for her to get into Rosefinch High School. Where there is a will, there is a way. Jiang Qin is smart and quick-witted. He can definitely get into Rosefinch Secondary, Fang Yan refused tactfully. The hidden meaning in Fang Yan's words was that his daughter was very smart. She could get into Rosefinch Secondary even without tutoring. If he does well, he might get into a better high school than Rosefinch Secondary. Jiang Qin's lips curled up into a seductive smile. He was satisfied with Fang Yan's answer. Why was it average? Because this guy was too vicious. Smart and quick-witted could definitely get into Rosefinch Secondary. Every year, there were many top students who failed in the high school entrance exam. If he couldn't get into Rosefinch Secondary, would it mean that he wasn't smart and quick-witted enough? Mr. Fang, you also think our dear sister is smart? Sister Li said happily. I'm not bragging. Our dear sister has been smart since she was young. She speaks earlier than other children of the same age and walks faster than other children. She could speak English when she was 3 and recite Tang poems when she was 5. By G something. That's so long that she could recite it all. That's amazing. Fang Yan followed up with a compliment. I'm not as good as her. Jiang Qin could even be my teacher. Pfft, Jiang Qin laughed out loud. Wasn't this reason a little too fake? She knocked on the plate with her chopsticks and said, Mom, are you done? In your eyes, I'm the Wenxiu star who descended to Earth, right? Sister Li smiled embarrassedly and said, I'm speaking the truth. She picked up some vegetables for Fang Yan and said, Mr. Fang, although it's our first time sitting at the same table to eat, you know Sister Li's personality. She's straightforward and says whatever she wants to say. I don't treat you as an outsider, so don't treat me like an outsider. It's like this. Jiang Qin is already in the 3rd year of middle school. It's the most important year before the high school entrance exam. Huaqing is a city with a strong education system. With her current results, it'll be dangerous for her to get into a key high school. Sister Li chuckled and looked very embarrassed. Isn't Mr. Fang a language teacher at Rosefinch Secondary? You must have a lot of knowledge. I want to ask you to tutor our son in language to add another layer of insurance for his high school entrance exam. Mr. Fang, do you think that's okay? Fang Yan glanced at Jiang Qin. The little girl was secretly shaking her finger at her, don't agree. Sister Li, it's not that I don't want to agree, but there are a lot of things to do at school. I can't go to work on time. I'm afraid that if I come back too late, it'll delay Jiang Qin's studies. Isn't that not worth it? Fang Yan said awkwardly. No, it won't. I won't. Auntie Li quickly tried to persuade her. How would it delay his studies? If you come back, tutor him for a while. If you don't come back, let him study on his own. How would it delay him? Besides, you have to eat, right? In the future, you can eat at Sister Li's place when you come back at night. Isn't it just an extra pair of chopsticks? Sister Li will make whatever you want to eat. Our old Jiang is a butcher. I don't dare to say anything else, but there's no shortage of pig head meat, pig intestines, pig ribs, and so on. How can that be? Fang Yan was a little tempted. If he ate here for dinner, he could save a lot of money. At least, he wouldn't have to worry about financial problems before he got his first month's salary. As for the future, he could just say that he was busy with work and push it off. Sister Li's cooking was still very delicious. Yes. Yes. Mr. Fang, just promise me, okay? Every parent wants their child to be good. I don't want her to be a dragon or a phoenix. She has to get into a good high school, a good university, and have a job that can feed her in the future, right? Fang Yan thought for a long time and said, Sister Li, I don't want you to feed me, nor do I want Jiang Qin to repay me in the future. I just want what you said. Yes, which parent doesn't want their child to study well, get good grades, and get into a good university and have a good future? Poor parents in the world. Although I don't have a child yet, I also have parents. I can understand their hard work and efforts on me. They are suffering. Pa, Fong Yan's calf was kicked. That was Jiang Qin expressing his dissatisfaction. Fong Yan pointed to Jiang Qin and said, I'm afraid that Jiang Qin won't be willing. Why wouldn't he be willing? Sister Li grabbed Jiang Qin and said, Dear, tell me quickly, are you willing to ask Mr. Fong to tutor you? Yes. Jiang Qin said with a sad face. Chapter 18. On the way to work, Fong Yan felt that someone was following him. He turned around abruptly and saw Jiang Qin, who was wearing a blue school uniform, standing not far away and glaring at him angrily. His cheeks were puffed up high, and he looked like he had suffered a lot. Liar, Jiang Qin scolded angrily. How am I a liar? Fong Yan turned around and left. Dong dong dong, Jiang Qin quickly caught up and followed behind Fong Yan. She scolded, Aren't you a liar? You promised me that you wouldn't tutor me. I did promise, Fong Yan defended himself. But when your mother asked for your opinion, you agreed readily. I thought that you had a certain understanding of me after spending a short time together and realized that I was a knowledgeable and upright teacher, so you changed your mind. Which female student doesn't want a handsome and easygoing tutor? I'm not surprised that you fell for my charm. Ah ha ha ha. Jiang Qin laughed until she couldn't breathe. Fong Yan. Teacher, how can you be so thick-skinned? I don't know that you're knowledgeable and upright, but I know that your skin is thicker than the city walls. How can you say such shameless words? Fong Yan stood at the bus stop and said to the young lady beside him, whose cheeks were rosy and even her slender neck was covered with a thin layer of pink, the most important thing for a teacher is to be consistent with what you say and do what you say. This is the truth, and I can't pretend to be modest to cover anything up. That would be a blasphemy to the student's intelligence. Bus number 19 drove over. Fong Yan waved at Jiang Qin and quickly rushed to the door. He felt that his body was as light as a swallow. How could the other people squeezing into the bus be a match for him? Don't ruin my righteousness. I know heaven sword and dragon slaying. I'm willing to be compassionate. Let me finish what I started. He had just run halfway when people surged over from all directions and surrounded him. He was stuck in the middle, unable to go in or out. He looked extremely embarrassed. Big sister, I'm a Tai Chi expert. Fong Yan patted a middle-aged woman in front of him who was the most energetic and unkindly stepping on his leather shoes with her high heels and said, It's very dangerous. I also know how to seduce your crotch. Do you believe that I can seduce your crotch? The big sister turned her head and said arrogantly. She stepped on Fong Yan's foot and jumped onto the bus. Looking at Fong Yan screaming on the spot, Jiang Qin, who was carrying his backpack, laughed so hard that tears flowed out. After finally getting into the car, Fong Yan stood far away from the woman who knew how to kick his crotch. To be able to squeeze onto the bus during the rush hour, which one of them wasn't a peerless master with rich combat experience? The few Tai Chi moves that Fong Yan knew were simply not enough. Someone patted his shoulder. Fong Yan turned around and saw Jiang Qin's delicate and flawless face behind him. Why are you here? I'm going to school. Are you the only one allowed to take bus 19? Oh. Fong Yan responded and turned around. Jiang Qin poked Fong Yan's back with her finger and said with a smile, Mr. Fong, are you really a Tai Chi expert? How can it be fake? Fong Yan nodded seriously. I didn't have a chance to show off today. I'll show you next time. So, Jiang Qin laughed even harder. This person is sick. Fong Yan stared at Jiang Qin for a few minutes and made a judgment in his heart. Mr. Fong, don't be so funny, okay? You have to know. You have to pay for it with your life. Jiang Qin said while panting. I'm not funny. Fong Yan said with dissatisfaction. He was the descendant of Fong's Tai Chi. How could such a serious fact be funny? Your words are very funny, okay? Jiang Qin laughed again. She really liked to laugh. Fong Yan was silent. He didn't want to talk to this brat who didn't know anything. Hello. Are you angry? Jiang Qin stood behind Fong Yan. Because she wasn't as tall as Fong Yan, she could only stand on her tiptoes when talking. Otherwise, it would seem like a little girl talking to the back of a young man. No. Fong Yan faced the window and looked at the morning view of watching outside. Humph, petty. You're angry. Are you really a teacher? Yes. Are you really a language teacher at Rosefinch Secondary? Yes. I don't believe it. Whatever. Prove it to me. No. Liar. What did I lie to you? You lied to me that you're a teacher at Rosefinch Secondary. I really am. Liar. The car was crowded. Everyone only had a little space to stand. Fong Yan and Jiang Qin were very close. In order to talk to Fong Yan, Jiang Qin's chest was almost pressed against Fong Yan's back. However, the little girl was still very reserved. She used her hand to support Fong Yan's back and tried to make a small gap between the two. Ah! Jiang Qin suddenly exclaimed. Her body also fell heavily on Fong Yan's body. Fong Yan suddenly straightened his waist and caught the girl's body. Only when Jiang Qin straightened her body did Fong Yan turn around. What's wrong? Fong Yan asked. He pushed me. Jiang Qin pointed at a middle-aged man in a black suit behind her. Who pushed you? The man adjusted his glasses. His attitude was very bad. The car was bumpy. I accidentally fell on top of you. Who told you to be so close? Why were you standing so close? Jiang Qin was not a timid person. She accused the middle-aged man of his crime. The car is so small. Where can I stand? Afraid of being squeezed. If you're afraid of being squeezed, take a taxi. You. Jiang Qin was speechless. She really did not have a better way to fight back against this tall and shameless man. Fong Yan looked at the middle-aged man from head to toe and said to Jiang Qin, I'll handle it. He pulled Jiang Qin to the front and stood where Jiang Qin was standing. His body just happened to separate Jiang Qin and the middle-aged man. Fong Yan turned around and looked at the middle-aged man who looked gentle with glasses and said, How do you feel? What? The man's face was full of disgust. He was very dissatisfied with Fong Yan's behavior of changing seats. I saw it all. What did you see? I don't know what you're talking about. The man dodged his eyes and hurriedly explained. Don't be so nervous, I'm not nervous. I didn't do anything. The middle-aged man did not like the look in Fong Yan's eyes. Fong Yan's eyes were very clear, but when he narrowed them slightly, they gave people a sharp and piercing feeling. He also did not like his smiling face. It was a look that said he knew everything but did not say anything. Idiot! Fong Yan scolded. I didn't ask anything. You're busy saying you didn't do anything. Don't you know that this behavior is called trying to cover up makes it more obvious? Psycho! The man scolded and prepared to leave. You didn't zip up. Fong Yan shouted. Chapter 19. Your zipper isn't closed. Hearing Fong Yan's shout, the people around all cast their eyes on the glasses man. The glasses man hurriedly reached out and felt around, but he didn't find the zipper open. I have already zipped it. The glasses man roared angrily. What do you mean you have already zipped it? You just unzipped it. Well, you rogue beast, no wonder you always rubbed behind my butt. It turns out that you have an intention for me. You bus pervert, you dirty scum. I didn't. The glasses man's neck was red, and he stared at Fong Yan fiercely. I just like the youthful and attractive atmosphere of a girl. What's wrong with that? Ho Xiaopeng thought with grievance. Ho Xiaopeng had this hobby, so he liked to squeeze in the bus every day when he went to work, even if he could drive a private car. After getting on the bus, he looked for prey in the bus. Today's luck was good. As soon as he got on the bus, he saw the handsome Jiang Qin, like a small white flower swaying quietly in the dark mountains. He quickly moved and soon stood behind Jiang Qin. However, before he had time to do anything, the girl's body suddenly fell forward. He was really wronged. Are you still denying it? Are you still a human? You don't even let a man go. You compensate me for my mental loss, you compensate me for my physical loss, you compensate me for my new pants. Fong Yan stepped forward and grabbed Ho Xiaopeng's collar. He looked sad and angry as if he had just been molested. If you don't compensate me, I will follow you to your company and let your company leader judge me. Everyone was shocked. Oh my God, that man actually likes men. A boy in a student uniform shouted. It's disgusting, how can there be such a person? A young office woman exclaimed. He was standing behind me just now. Is he also interested in my butt? I will kill him. A bold man roared angrily. You let me go, you let me go. Ho Xiaopeng desperately tried to pull Fong Yan's hand away. However, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get Fong Yan's hand away from his clothes. You compensate, I'll pay. I'll pay. Ho Xiaopeng shouted. He took out his wallet, took out all the money in it, and stuffed it into Fong Yan's hand. He shouted, I'll pay you. Fong Yan let go, and the bus arrived at the stop. Ho Xiaopeng jumped out of the bus and fled. It could be believed that he would never dare to take the bus again in his life. You dare to bully the butcher's daughter. You're courting death. Fong Yan stroked a handful of bills, feeling very proud. You're so annoying. Jiang Qin blushed. You're annoying. At this moment, Jiang Qin felt that Fong Yan was not as annoying as he thought. In order to prevent others from looking at him strangely, he deliberately switched places with him. In order to seek justice for herself, she didn't hesitate to accuse the bus pervert of molesting a man. She truly lived up to the saying of helping others discuss themselves in private customization. He's still very loyal, huh? I'm saying this for you. Fong Yan said. The bus loudspeaker announced that they had arrived at number 26 middle school. Jiang Qin looked at Fong Yan with her big watery eyes and said, come back early tonight. What? Tutor me. The girl said with a crisp voice, carrying her school bag quickly got off the bus. Her ponytail swayed lightly, like a cheerful movement. Her slim figure quickly blended into the crowd of students on the roadside, forming a mighty blue army. When Fong Yan walked into the classroom, the bell rang. Class 9 suddenly boiled up. Mr. Fong, you didn't leave. That's great. Mr. Fong, we like you. Mr. Fong, you're not here to say goodbye to us, are you? Looking at the concerned smiling faces below the stage, Fong Yan's heart was getting warmer and warmer. Who said that a mouse spoils a pot of soup? At least, except for the 3 mice, the other students were still very good, and the pot of soup was still delicious. Fang Yan waved his hand, signaling everyone to be quiet. "I'm not leaving," Fang Yan said. "I just came, how can I leave?" "Yesterday," Teacher Chen said. A boy said halfway, then quickly shut his mouth, afraid that someone would snitch on him and pass his words to the head teacher, Chen Dahai. If that happened, he wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. Teacher Chen. Fang Yan thought for a moment, it should be Chen Tao's father, Chen Dahai. He was the head teacher of this class. It seemed that he would have to deal with him often in the future. As a smart person, he should try his best to have a good relationship with him. Teacher Chen's son is a hooligan, but it doesn't mean that Teacher Chen is also a hooligan. We should all have confidence in Teacher Chen. Teacher Chen isn't a bad person, it's just that his good isn't obvious. After getting to know him for a long time, you will understand. Fang Yan said with a smile. It's not necessarily the father's responsibility to not teach his son. Teacher Chen is usually busy with work and taking care of you, neglecting his own son's education. So, in the future, I will help him teach his son well. The students could hear the killing intent hidden in Teacher Fang Yan's words. He wanted to help Teacher Chen teach his son well, but how? Fang Yan looked around. He didn't see Jing Guodong, Chen Tao, and Li Yang coming to class. Obviously, they still couldn't accept the fact that they didn't kick him out. However, they would definitely be able to think it through. Even if they couldn't, they could change classes. To be honest, no teacher would be willing to teach this kind of hooligan student, no matter how majestic, noble, and elegant this student thought he was. Students would have a rebellious mentality, more or less. They would do some things that were out of line. Fang Yan was also young, and he was still young, so he could tolerate and accept it. However, for students like Jing Guodong, Li Yang, and Chen Tao who insulted and beat up teachers and classmates, Fang Yan didn't have a good impression of them at all. He didn't have the slightest bit of tolerance for them. Who is the class monitor? Fang Yan asked. Jing Guodong, a girl answered. Fang Yan was secretly annoyed. How could this kind of student be the class monitor? The class monitor skipped class to drink, broke class discipline, and affected other student studies. Who is the language class representative? Me. Huang Haoren stood up. Temporary. N. Note down that Jing Guodong, Chen Tao, and Li Yang skipped class. They have leave slips. A tall boy in the back row stood up and trotted to put 3 slips of paper on the podium. Fang Yan glanced at them. The 3 slips of paper were written in the same color with a cylindrical pen and the same font. Teacher, I want to ask for leave, please approve. Student Jing Guodong, Li Yang, and Chen Tao. Act first and report later. Fang Yan walked down the podium and said to a girl sitting in the front row, lend me your pen. The girl quickly handed over the pen in her hand. Fang Yan pulled out the pen holder and wrote on the 3 slips of paper, no approval. Then he threw the 3 leave slips to the tall boy and said, they either come to class or skip class. The tall boy held the 3 leave slips as if he was holding a burning flame. Chapter 20. Fang Yan threw the Year 1 Chinese textbook on the desk and asked, what do you guys want to learn? The students looked at each other. How could he choose this kind of thing? Don't you have to learn whatever your teacher teaches you? Fang Yan understood what they were thinking and said with a smile, how about this, each of you find an article in the textbook that you like the most. We'll study the one that is mentioned the most today. Teacher, I like Farewell to Cambridge Again. I like Spring in Spring Garden. Jing Ku assassinates Emperor Qin. This is so domineering. Fang Yan signaled for everyone to be quiet and said, many people like Farewell to Cambridge Again. Let's learn Su Jimao's well-known poem today. Since we're going to learn Farewell Cambridge again, let's go to Cambridge first to get the feeling. Sir, Cambridge is in England. Everyone laughed. Wasn't this teacher a little too nonsensical? Dozens of people came to Cambridge just to study a text. So everyone knows that Cambridge is from Cambridge University. This proves that everyone has a certain understanding of this article. Fong Yan was very satisfied with the students' reaction. Although we don't have Cambridge Bridge, we have Sparrow Bridge. The Sparrow Bridge was a bridge within the campus of Rosefinch Secondary. It was built on the Sparrow River and connected both sides of the river. Every time classes ended in the afternoon, Sparrow Bridge would be packed with people. There were also some young couples who liked to be lovey-dovey on the bridge, so many people liked to change the name of the Sparrow Bridge to the Magpie Bridge. The autumn wind was blowing, and the sun was shining warmly. The willow tree drooped, rippling gently. Occasionally, a fish would jump out of the water, drawing a beautiful arc on the surface of the water before quickly falling back into the shallow water again. The lotus flowers had long since withered, and the lotus leaves had also turned yellow and tattered. During school hours, the Sparrow River was serene and quiet, and there was an air of loneliness about it. The students stood on the Sparrow Bridge, feeling both happy and amazed. "Teacher, why did you bring us here?" "Come to class," Fong Yan said. "Today, we will stand on Sparrow Bridge and learn the poem, Farewell to Cambridge Again." "Don't tease me, teacher. How do I learn it?" "That's right, there's no table or chair, and there's no way to take notes." "We don't need to take notes," Fong Yan said with a smile. "I want you to memorize it." Huang Haoren was the representative of the Chinese class. When he heard the commotion, he shouted, "Everyone, be quiet. It's class time now. Since Mr. Fong brought us out, he must have his reasons. Don't you have any confidence in Mr. Fong?" On the first day they met, he was defeated by Fong Yan. However, Huang Haoren did not bear a grudge against Fong Yan. Instead, he became his loyal supporter. Moreover, after the incident, Lu Chaoga sent someone to call Huang Haoren to her office to ask about the conflict between Fong Yan, Zheng Guodong, Li Yang, and Chen Tao. Huang Haoren was not threatened or tempted by Zheng Guodong. Instead, he calmly explained the situation and expressed his and the other students' dissatisfaction with Zheng Guodong and the other two. This was also the reason why Lu Chaoga knew that Fong Yan had been wronged and stood up for him during the meeting. Fong Yan was not surprised by the change in Huang Haoren's attitude. Who did not pursue idols and heroes? "I am beautiful and strong." This was Fong Yan's view of himself. Perhaps it was biased, but he firmly believed so. Fong Yan scanned the surroundings and said, "Everyone, wait." Then, he quickly ran toward the other side of the bridge. 10 minutes passed, and Fong Yan was nowhere to be seen. Instead, an ebony boat was cruising leisurely on the surface of the Sparrow River. "It's Baldy," a student shouted. Baldy was the school's security guard. Because his hair was sparse and there were only a few strands, the student simply ignored the few strands of hair that he treasured and called him Baldy. As time passed, Baldy's name became more and more famous. He could only let it be. The security guard was in charge of patrolling and fishing. Because there was a Sparrow River in Rosefinch Secondary, and the students liked to play by the river or on the Sparrow Bridge, their belongings often fell into the river. Although the river was not deep and did not pose any danger to the students, they could not be allowed to dive into the water to fish for their belongings. Every time this happened, Baldy would paddle the second-hand wooden boat that the school had purchased from outside. He would use a hook or personally dive into the water to pick up the belongings that the students had dropped. It was class time now, and there were no signs of people around. No one should have dropped anything. Why was Baldy paddling the boat? As the wooden boat approached, everyone realized that the person standing beside Baldy was their language teacher, Fong Yen. Gently, I leave, just as gently as I came. A clear and melodious voice suddenly rang out in the middle of the Sparrow River. The students' gazes were immediately drawn over. It's Teacher Fong Yen. Teacher Fong Yen is reciting Farewell to Cambridge Bridge again. Wow, so stylish, I waved gently, bidding farewell to the rosy clouds in the western sky. Fong Yen waved toward the west. His posture was elegant and affectionate. The golden willow by the river is a bride in the setting sun. The beautiful silhouette in the rippling light ripples in my heart. All the students' gazes turned to the willow trees by the Sparrow River. This was the first time they realized that the ordinary willow trees that they had ignored in the past were actually so alluring, beautiful, and beautiful. They seemed to have come to life in an instant, making people want to cherish and protect them. They wanted to give them a proper name and respect. The grass under the soft mud, swaying in the water. In the gentle waves of the Kong River, I am willing to be a water plant. Fong Yen squatted down, scooped up a handful of water plants from the bottom of the river, and smelled them bashfully. The noise stopped, and the Sparrow Bridge was silent. Everyone was brought into this poetic and picturesque scene. That handsome young man in a Chinese tunic suit, that scholarly man holding a weed in his hand, wasn't he the famous poet who had just returned from Cambridge? The pool under the elm is not a clear spring, but a rainbow in the sky. Crushed among the floating weeds, a rainbow-like dream settles. Seeking dreams. Propping a long pole, drifting toward the greener grass. A boat full of starlight, singing in the splendor of the starlight. Fong Yan's voice became more sonorous and powerful, full of passion. The students' expressions became more and more serious, and many of them even clenched their fists. But I can't sing. Silence is the song of farewell. Even the summer insects are silent for me. Silence is the Kong Bridge tonight. Fong Yan's voice became low, as if he was leaving his most intimate lover. The students on the bridge were infected by this atmosphere. They were depressed, and their eyes were wet. I leave quietly, just as I come quietly. I wave my sleeves, not taking away a cloud. Fong Yen waved to the students on the shore. The ebony boat passed through the Sparrow Bridge, out of the students' sight. They were stunned on the spot, and their chests were filled with love and poetry. Chapter 21. Mr. Fong, Baldy took the initiative to comfort Fong Yen as he rowed the boat. Young people shouldn't be discouraged easily. Back in the day, I wanted to be a musician too. But you ended up becoming the school's security guard. Fong Yen turned to look at Baldy and asked, "What are you trying to say?" Baldy chuckled and said, "Do your students not like you?" Impossible. Fong Yen denied his baseless guess. I'm not bragging, but if Rosefinch Secondary were to select the top 10 most popular teachers of the year, I would definitely be number 1. Then why aren't they applauding? Baldy asked, puzzled. Although I'm not cultured, I think the poem you recited just now was quite cultured. That was a recitation. An emotional recitation, Fong Yen corrected him. Yes. Recitation. I think your recitation was quite emotional, but why didn't they feel anything at all? Look, these little brats didn't applaud for you. That's because it's not time yet. Fong Yen stretched out 3 fingers and then pressed them down one by one, counting, 3, 2, 1. Applaud. Clatter, as if it had been discussed beforehand, applause rang out on Sparrow Bridge, mixed with the shouts of the students. Mr. Fong, you're too handsome. You're too handsome. You're Sujimo. Oppa, you're my Prince Charming, Mr. Fong. We also want to take a boat. Fong Yen ignored Baldy's look of surprise and admiration and said, Baldy, row the boat back." Baldy was very angry and said, "When you went to borrow a boat from me just now, call me Captain Kai. You can't burn the bridge after you've used me. You're a teacher, you can't call me Baldy like those little brats. That will have a bad influence on those students." "Okay, Baldy," Fang Yen said. Baldy felt helpless. Fang Yen walked over and patted Baldy's shoulder. "Captain Kai, maybe those little bastards have told you before, or maybe they've temporarily forgotten about it. But, thank you. Every student who graduates from Rosefinch Secondary will have a memory of Baldy paddling a long pole in the Sparrow River. You're inconspicuous now, but in the future, in their memories, your bald head will shine with a golden light." Baldy rubbed his eyes and said with reddened eyes, "Everything about Sparrow River is great, but there are a lot of bugs. Mr. Fong, you can just call me Baldy. I love to hear it." "Alright, Baldy." Fong Yen put his arm around Baldy's shoulders and laughed out loud. The boat stopped by the shore. Fong Yen waved to the students on the bridge and shouted, "Everyone, come here." Thus, the students surrounded him with a loud boom. "Mr. Fong, why did you ask for a boat? Baldy, did you drink today? Mr. Fong, don't tell me you want me to go on a boat and learn poetry." "I want you to go on a boat and learn poetry," Fong Yen said with a smile. He could clearly feel that the students in the class were looking at him differently, especially some of the female students. "What do you want?" "I'm a teacher, okay? We're not of the same social class. Don't tell me you want to woo me." Seeking dreams. Paddling a long pole to where the grass is greener. How can you paddle a long pole without a boat? What is a poem? It's only when it's expressed with emotion. Only by sitting on a boat will you be able to understand the romance and deep feelings expressed in this poem. Clap, the students spontaneously applauded. Thus, such a scene happened on Sparrow River today. The wooden boat moved slowly on Sparrow River. One after another, students in Rosefinch Secondary's uniform stood at the bow of the ebony boat with their heads held high and their chests puffed out. They held books in their hands and recited loudly, "Seeking dreams. Paddling a long pole to where the grass is greener." In the process of reciting, they would do all sorts of strange actions that they created themselves. For example, when they recited, "Softly I leave, just as softly I come," they would blow a farewell kiss to the students on the shore. For example, when they recited, "The golden willow by the riverside is the bride in the setting sun," they would reveal an intoxicated expression to the girls in the class. This was a poetic recitation, a reenactment of the scene, and a creative expression. After a student finished reciting, Baldy dutifully sent him to the shore. Then, another student eagerly jumped onto the bow of the boat. The students had already formed a long queue, and they proceeded in an orderly manner according to the order of their student numbers. There were no arguments, no pushing, and only a happy tacit understanding. Dang dang dang, the electronic bell of the school rang. "Ah!" The students cried out in surprise. "Why is the class ending so soon?" "That's right, it's not my turn yet, what should we do?" "I don't want to end class." When Fong Yen heard the commotion behind him, he waved his hand to signal for everyone to quiet down. He smiled and said, "Doesn't everyone want to go back?" "No," the students replied in unison. "Do you still want to continue your classes on Sparrow River?" "Yes," the students shouted loudly. Some of them also shouted with grievance, "Teacher, it's not our turn yet. We've waited for so long. Wouldn't it be too unfair for us to go back like this?" Fong Yan nodded to show that he understood everyone's thoughts. He said, "Then let's continue. The next class is still Chinese. Have you forgotten?" "Yay!" the students cheered, and some of the more active students even jumped in joy. However, the end of class brought some negative effects to Fong Yan's class. There were too many onlookers. The originally quiet and desolate Sparrow River was now crowded with people. Many students in school uniforms rushed over in groups of 2s or 3s. They pointed at the ebony boat on Sparrow River, and they were very curious about this new teaching method. In Rosefinch Secondary, or rather, in the entire world of Hua Xia High School, there was no teacher who would use this method to teach students farewell to Cambridge again. Bang bang. Someone knocked on the office door. Lu Chaoga covered the financial aid proposal for needy students in her hands and shouted, "Come in." The plump Jing Jing jogged in. First, he eagerly filled Lu Chaoga's teacup with hot water. Then, he said with a smile, "Principal Lu, something strange happened in the school." "What strange thing?" Lu Chaoga asked expressionlessly. Although she knew that Jing Jing was the lackey and informant that person had arranged to be by her side, she really needed such a lackey and informant in the school. He was the first to report to her many interpersonal relationships and the latest, interesting news that happened in the school. Jing Jing handled this area very well. There were no mediocre people in this world. It was just that you didn't know your place. That new teacher. Fong Yan, Jing Jing said with a chuckle. He brought the students of Class 9 to Sparrow Bridge. He got Baldy to row the boat with the students on Sparrow River. Lu Chaoga stood up abruptly. This bastard. What was he trying to do? Didn't he know that Jing Tiancheng's people were watching him like a hungry tiger? Lu Chaoga felt that she had done something stupid. Why did she keep this person who didn't look like a good person? Was it because he helped her improve the stairway to heaven? Lu Chaoga was in a bad mood. She felt that ever since Fong Yan came, her work had become more challenging. Why did he do that? Lu Chaoga asked. Seeing that Lu Chaoga was suppressing her anger, Jing Jing began to add fuel to the fire. He said, "I asked around. He said that he brought the students to learn something called farewell to Cambridge again. Is there such a teaching method? Just to learn a poem, he brought the students to risk their lives on Sparrow River. What if something happened to the students? Who would be responsible for it? Teacher Fong Yan is still too young. He doesn't use his brain when doing things. This time, I'm afraid that Headmaster Zhang is going to make a move on him. Headmaster Lu spent so much effort to protect him, but he doesn't know how to cherish it." "Are you done?" Lu Chaoga stared at Jing Jing and asked. "Headmaster Lu, bring me to have a look," Lu Chaoga said. "That's too much." Chen Dehai barged into Li Mingqiang's office angrily and said, "Headmaster, you can't do that. If anything happens to the students, wouldn't the parents rush in and tear us apart?" Li Mingqiang and Chen Dehai had a close relationship, and they both belonged to Jing Tiancheng's camp. Therefore, his words and actions were more straightforward. Li Mingqiang gestured for Chen Dehai to sit down and said, "Old Chen, what happened again? What made you so angry?" "It's that stupid Chinese teacher. He didn't teach properly during class time and brought the students to Sparrow River to row. Who would be responsible if the students' homework was delayed? Who would be responsible if anything happened to the students? This is Rosefinch Secondary, not a community kindergarten." Li Mingqiang's eyes lit up and he said with a smile, "This stupid is really daring. However, doesn't this give us a good reason to chase him out?" Chen Dehai squinted his eyes and smiled. He said, "This time, let Old Merchant do the firing. Old Merchant is the leader of the first year's Chinese team. It's appropriate for him to do the firing." Li Ziqiang nodded while thinking. "If we take down Fong this time, our beautiful principal's face will definitely be ugly, right? Headmaster, take the opportunity to comfort her. Maybe you can get intimate with her," Chen Dehai said in a flattering manner. Li Ziqiang's sharp eyes swept over Qin Dahai and said, "Old Qin, some things can't be said carelessly. You'll bring trouble to yourself and me." "Yes. Yes. I understand, headmaster." Li Dahai quickly apologized. He thought to himself that with the protection of that god, it would be like a mantis trying to stop a chariot if they wanted to touch that woman. He was full of powerlessness. "Just be careful in the future. We're brothers. There's no need to apologize." Li Ziqiang waved his hand. "Call old merchant over. I'll talk to him. This is such a serious matter. As the leader of the Chinese team, he has to stand up and say something." "Okay. Headmaster. I'll go get him now." Qin Dahai agreed with a smile. Last time, he managed to escape. This time, let's see how he escapes. "Old Qin, that's not right. We're trying to calm down the teachers of Rosefinch Secondary and chase some black sheep out of the school. Headmaster, you're the best." Qin Dahai and Li Ziqiang looked at each other and laughed heartily. Chapter 22. Innovation meant being different from others. Therefore, in everyone's eyes, you were a freak. Fong Yan didn't think of himself as a freak, he thought about it seriously, then softly said to himself, a dreamer. When he first read Farewell to Cambridge Again by Su Jima, he had such a fantasy. In the evening, on a clear river where fish and seaweed could be seen swimming at the bottom, he would hold a long pole and leisurely travel between the green mountains and the blue water, looking for the romantic passion and the mood of parting that the poet wrote this poem. Or perhaps, he would enjoy this special leisurely and contented mood. He hadn't had the chance to experience this before. Now, he wanted his students to have no regrets. Some students didn't even have such a fantasy. But as a teacher, he not only had to impart knowledge, but he also had to understand how to open the mind. Wasn't that what teachers were supposed to do? Students were very sensitive to new things. This could be seen from the increasing number of students gathering on both sides of Sparrow River. Hey, how romantic. You must have a deeper understanding of the poem this way, right? Exactly. Why didn't our language teacher think of such a good idea? Grandstanding, this is the new language teacher from class 9 trying to attract attention. As Lu Chaoga watched the students recite their poems at Sparrow River, she listened to the discussions of the students around her. This confirmed her suspicions and worries. She said to Jing, who was following closely behind, Jing, go and do 2 things. Principal Lu, what are they? Jing looked like he was about to make a move. Was she going to call Fong Yan over and give him a good scolding? First, write an application form for extracurricular activities and leave it on my desk, Lu Chaoga instructed bluntly. In Fong Yan's name. Second, inform Jia Siding, the head of the first-year language team, and ask him to gather all the teachers at Sparrow River. Jing felt that his ears must have been damaged. Principal Lu, isn't this too risky? Lu Chaoga sneered and said, it's risky if we don't do this. Lu Chaoga was a very smart woman. Although she hadn't been back in China for a long time, she still had some experience in the operation of the school and the political struggle in the office. Fong Yan's intention was naturally for the sake of the students, but he had pushed himself into danger by doing so. First, he didn't report to the school. If he didn't report to the school, he wouldn't get a risk assessment from the school. If something were to happen, who would be responsible? The people on Jing Tiancheng's side were likely to use this as a target to find trouble with him. Now, what she needed to do was to help him fill in the application form. Although this application should have been submitted to the Chinese Literature Department, he was new and didn't know the rules. This excuse was still plausible. Secondly, his novel teaching method had not been discussed and approved by the language group. This would embarrass all the language teachers and make things difficult for them. If she took the initiative to make Fang Yan a role model, she could clearly and unmistakably tell everyone that Fang Yan's method was correct, then they could only learn from him without the right to question him. This would save Fang Yan a lot of trouble. Of course, it would also add a lot of burden to his teaching career in the future. Jealousy existed everywhere. If a new teacher became a role model in the school after only 2 days, what would the other teachers think of him? Of course, Lu Chaoge didn't care about this, and she believed that Fang Yan wouldn't care either. A person who didn't attract jealousy was a mediocre person. From this lesson with Fang Yan, she knew that the overly young fellow was actually the same type of person as her. Principal Lu, what I'm saying is that we don't need to go against Director Zhang and the others for a teacher like Fang Yan who likes to cause trouble. Even if we manage to save him this time, what about next time? You definitely won't understand. Lu Chaoge stared at Jing Jing with her beautiful eyes and said word by word, I'm not protecting Fang Yan. I'm protecting Rosefinch Secondary, protecting the students of Rosefinch Secondary. I don't quite understand. You don't need to understand. Lu Chaoge glanced at him coldly. Execute. Yes. Principal Lu. Jing Jing was unwilling to give up. He glared fiercely at where Fang Yan was standing, then quickly ran towards the direction of the teaching building. Fang Yan didn't think too much. He was just doing what he wanted to do to his heart's content. Gossip was a fearful thing, but if you didn't do anything, that would be the truly terrifying thing. What were mediocre people's favorite things to do? To desperately drag you to the same starting line as them. This would make them look better, and they could proudly say to others, look, we're all the same. More and more students gathered to watch, and this created a lot of pressure for the students who were about to board the boat. Some students were very daring. The bigger the stage, the more excited they were. However, more students were afraid of being in front of the stage. The number of people watching from both sides of the Sparrow River was comparable to the number of students attending a large-scale school event. And the students of Class 9 were the performers on stage. I know you're all very nervous. Fang Yan looked at the remaining students who hadn't boarded the boat and said loudly, to be honest, I'm just as nervous as you are. Originally, I only needed to teach 40 students from Class 9, but now I have to teach all the teachers and students in the school. Everyone laughed, but it was a little forced. Actually, there are many ways to solve this. We can wait until the bell rings before continuing. I can also say that we're done now and bring you back to the classroom, but I don't want to do that. Why should I do that? Because there are too many students, I'll become timid. Because there are people watching, I'll choose to give up. I'm not the kind of brave soldier who can go on the battlefield and kill enemies, but I'm definitely not a coward who will run away when there are slightly more people. If we give up today, will we still choose to give up the next time we encounter a situation like this, or an even bigger one? Sometimes, giving up once is equivalent to giving up on your own life. You're all still young, and you have countless opportunities to give up. I'm also as young as you, and I also have countless opportunities to choose again. However, when we leave Rosefinch, enter university, and enter society, we'll become sophisticated, and we'll become old and tired. At that time, we'll definitely regret giving up today. Fang Yan raised his voice and asked loudly, now tell me, will you choose to fight like a brave soldier, or will you choose to be a deserter and a coward? I'll go, a tall male student shouted loudly. His name was Zhao Lei, and he was the student who gave Jing Guodong, Chen Tao, and Li Yang the leave slip before class. Fang Yan had a deep impression of him. His face was flushed, and he was stirred up by Fang Yan's words. He wanted to immediately go to the battlefield and be a soldier who fought fiercely. I'll go. I'll go. I'm not afraid of many people. Why do you have to go? Before, it was arranged according to the student number, and now it's my turn. A girl wearing glasses shouted angrily. Fong Yan chuckled at the side. These students had made the right choice. Of course, it was under his wise leadership. Lu Chaoge looked at this scene from afar, and her heart felt infinite joy and gratification. Maybe it's not bad to break through this guy. Lu Chaoge murmured. Xing Guodong, Li Yang, and Chen Tao also came. In order to gain sympathy, Xing Guodong's eyes were still covered with gauze, and Li Yang and Chen Tao's faces were also covered with red medicine. The medicine was distributed very unevenly. It seemed that the nurse who did it was very amateur. After the three arrived, they didn't greet Fong Yan. They just stood far behind the crowd, and looked at Fong Yan with eyes full of malice. They originally wanted to spend another 2 days in the ward, and sent a message to Zhao Lei to help them ask for a day off. They didn't expect Zhao Lei to quickly send them a message: if the teacher doesn't approve the leave slip, you can either come to class or skip class. They also thought of fighting with Fong Yan to the end, but Chen Tao's words woke them up. If we don't go, won't that bastard have an excuse to drive us away? Therefore, they immediately packed up and jogged to school. When they arrived at the classroom, they found it empty. After asking the students in the next class, they found out that the teacher had brought all the students to Sparrow River for class. Although they didn't understand why they were having class here, they could only jog over to join the group. They ignored Fong Yan, and Fong Yan also didn't take the initiative to talk to them. He only whispered to Huang Haoran, who was standing beside him, that Jing Guodong, Li Yang, and Chen Tao were absent for a period without reason. I'll write it down, Huang Haoran said cooperatively. The class continued, and the recitation continued. The students who boarded the boat later didn't get stage fright because there were too many onlookers. Instead, they used all their strength and put in more effort. The recitation became more and more emotional, and the performance became more and more exquisite. The tall boy called Zhao Lei performed so well that even Fong Yan praised him, and was the first to stand up and applaud him. When the bell rang, most of the onlookers on the riverbank dispersed, but there was still a group of spectators who stayed on the riverbank. Lu Chaoge, Li Mingqiang, Chen Dahai, and a large group of familiar and unfamiliar Rosefinch secondary teachers stood guard at the side. Fong Yan couldn't help but smile bitterly. He knew things would get out of hand. The last to board the boat was a girl. Fong Yan patted her shoulder and said with a smile, "I'll give everyone a perfect ending." The girl pushed up her little red glasses and said, "Mr. Fong, I'll definitely work hard and won't let you down. It's up to you." The girl boarded the boat, and Baldy rowed it toward the center of the river. Softly I leave, softly I come. Softly I wave my hand. Plop. The girl was so focused on reciting that she didn't notice that the boat under her feet slipped. She didn't tell everyone in advance and fell into the Sparrow River. "Mr. Fong," a student fell into the water. Baldy shouted toward the riverbank. "Save them." Fong Yan shouted anxiously. He jumped into the river with a plop and rowed toward the center of the Sparrow River with all his might. Chapter 23. The atmosphere in the conference room was tense, and the air was filled with the smell of gunpowder. The school leaders of Rosefinch Secondary had held meetings for 2 consecutive days just to deal with the teacher. This was something that had never happened in the history of Rosefinch Secondary. The principal of Rosefinch Secondary, Zhang Xiaofeng, played with the cigarette in his hand and scanned the room. "Everyone, please speak." No one spoke. "What? No one wants to speak." Zhang Xiaofeng grinned. "Clamoring for a meeting, but now that everyone is here, no one is willing to speak. What's going on?" Lu Chaoga sat up straight, but she was drawing on her notebook with a pencil. She was drawing a snowfield, a very difficult flower arrangement technique. She was only looking for inspiration now, so she didn't dare to ruin those expensive flowers. Li Mingqiang crossed his arms and lowered his head. No one knew what he was thinking. Everyone else also lowered their heads and maintained a meditative state. If no one wants to speak, shall I announce the end of the meeting? Zhang Xiaofang said as he knocked on the table with his fingers. Principal, it's not that we don't want to speak, but we don't know how to say it, Jia Siding, the leader of the language team, said with a troubled expression. Originally, Fang Yan was not qualified to attend today's meeting. However, because Fang Yan was a teacher of the Year 1 Chinese literature team, and because the incident this time was indeed within the jurisdiction of the Chinese literature team, Office Director Fu Chang personally called him and invited him. Ha! Zhang Xiaofeng frowned. Leader Jia, what's the problem? This isn't the first day we've worked together. We're firm teammates, so what can't we just say? Principal, originally, the teacher would definitely be held accountable for this incident. Jia Siding glanced at Lu Chaoga and acted like he was ready to go all out. Taking students to Sparrow River during school hours and causing a female student to fall into the water, how serious of a dereliction of duty is this? Lu Chaoga's hand didn't stop drawing. She didn't even raise her head as she said, Team Leader Jia, you still don't understand the situation. Teacher Fang Yan isn't bringing the students to Sparrow River to play. He's bringing them to study the essay, Farewell to Cambridge again. This is something that all the teachers and students in the school know. How did it become a dereliction of duty in Team Leader Jia's mouth? Principal Lu, I'm the leader of the first-year language team. You said that Fang Yan brought students to Sparrow River to study, but why didn't I see any applications from him? Not only did I not see it, the entire Chinese literature team did not see it either. Also, for every novel teaching method, we need to discuss it in the language group. If the results are good, we will strongly support it. If the effect is not good, it will waste time and energy. We will stop it in time. Let's not discuss whether Mr. Fang's teaching method is good or not. He didn't inform us in advance, which is a violation of the system. Jia Siding looked at Lu Chaoga and pleaded, Principal Lu, you have to understand our difficulties. If all the teachers in the Chinese literature team did what Fang Yan did and deviated from the lesson plan to mess around, wouldn't our work be a mess? If that happened, we would delay the students' precious time and affect their grades. I can't afford to take responsibility for that. Crack, she used too much force, and the pencil in Lu Chaoga's hand snapped. Lu Chaoga closed the notebook in her hand and stared at Jia Siding with a sharp gaze. She said, Who said that Fang Yan didn't write an application report? His report is lying on my desk right now. I've already asked Dean Jing to retrieve it. You'll see it very soon. Who knows if you found someone to write it for him at the last minute? Li Mingqiang laughed coldly. Besides, the activity report should be sent to the Chinese literature team, not to you, the vice principal in charge of human resources, right? Dean Li, shouldn't we have full trust in our teachers? Lu Chaoga asked confidently. Because I was the one who recruited teacher Fang Yan, he's more familiar with me. He's not very familiar with some of the school's rules and regulations, so he wrote the application and sent it to me. Teacher Fang Yan did make a mistake, but it was only a mistake that violated the procedures. I will criticize and educate him on this and ask him to write a self-reflection. This was the strategy that Lu Chaoga had prepared beforehand. She couldn't fire a new teacher just because he wasn't familiar with the procedures, right? She didn't give him any time to catch his breath. She immediately took the initiative and aimed at Jia Siding. Team Leader Jia, you said that every novel teaching method needs to be discussed at a meeting of the Chinese literature team. Then I'd like to ask you a question. From last year to this year, how many novel teaching methods have the Chinese literature team discussed and approved? This. Not a single one. Lu Chaoge threw out the answer directly. You mean to say that the current teaching method is the best, and there's no need to make any changes? It's been passed down for so many years, so of course it has its advantages, Jia Siding argued. Of course, there will be some flaws and inadequacies, but our teachers have rich work experience, so they'll self-correct in the process of teaching. Then you sure have it easy as the leader of the Chinese literature team. Lu Chaoge sneered. I have to thank the school leaders for their trust and the support of my colleagues. Some colleagues who don't support or cooperate make me feel very sorry. Jia Siding was a Chinese literature teacher, so he was very eloquent. Even when Lu Chaoge argued with him, she couldn't gain the upper hand. Team leader Jia, society is advancing, and the demand for talents is constantly changing. Our Rosefinch secondary students have to adapt to the trend, and even guide it, not teach them to be bookworms who only know how to read books. Vice Principal Lu, you might be too pessimistic about our school's students. Li Mingqiang laughed and said, our Rosefinch secondary students can enter a very good university after graduation. The students who have graduated from university and started working have also achieved very good results in society. Principal Xiaofeng, I'm right, right? Last time, I even suggested to you that when Rosefinch Secondary's 50th anniversary, we must invite more outstanding graduates to participate in the school's activities. Zhang Xiaofeng nodded and said, that's true. But Vice Principal Lu has just returned to China, so you don't have a clear understanding of our school's situation and the employment situation of our students. This is understandable. After all, everyone needs to adapt. Li Mingqiang looked at Lu Chaoge and said, Vice Principal Lu, we all know that teacher Fang Yan was recruited by you, and that you have high expectations and feelings for him. However, the school has its rules and regulations, and teacher Fang Yan did break the rules and regulations. It would be fine if nothing happened, but now a student has fallen into the water because of his negligence. The school's parents will come soon. If we can't give them an explanation, I'm afraid it will be difficult for them to accept it, right? Yes. Someone has to stand up and take responsibility. Young people are too radical. Students can't be sloppy in their work. Zhang Xiaofeng tapped the table with his fingers and asked, what's everyone's opinion on how to deal with it? Expel Fang Yan. He hasn't passed the school's 3-month probation period. It can't be considered as expulsion, but he didn't pass the probation. Agree to expel Fang Yan. If he doesn't do anything, everything is good. Lu Chaoge said loudly. Teacher Fang Yan is dedicated to the students. Although there are some small flaws, we can't treat this kind of passionate and idealistic teacher. Principal Lu, you can't say that. Is the student falling into the water a small flaw? Li Mingqiang retorted. Everyone knows that the Sparrow River is very shallow. Even if someone falls into the water, there won't be any danger. What if his head accidentally hits a rock when he falls into the water? You're making wild guesses. Isn't that also wild guesses? Of course, it's good that the student is fine. If something happens to the student, it will be too late for us to regret it. Therefore, we must deal with this kind of teacher who has no discipline and organization. Dong dong dong, Zhang Xiaofeng knocked on the table and said, everyone, let's vote. Those who agree to expel Fang Yan, raise your hands. Except for Lu Xiaoge and Zhang Xiaofeng, everyone else raised their hands. Zhang Xiaofeng nodded and said, the results are out. The school's board of directors has decided to expel the language teacher of grade 1, class 9, Fang Yan. Li Mingqiang and Jia Siding looked at each other. Their faces didn't change, but they were very satisfied with the result. This time, not only did they get rid of the annoying Fang Yan, but they also trampled on Lu Chaoga's prestige. Don't think that you can suppress us just because you came back from abroad. What you learned in the United States is unorthodox. Our teaching methods are traditional and authentic. In fact, through Fang Yan's incident, it wasn't just a matter of whether Fang Yan would stay or not, but a fierce conflict between the school's conservative and reformist factions. The conservative faction had a lot of people and power, and they also had Director Jing Tiancheng's support. Their attacks were fierce. Lu Chaoga was alone and weak. It seemed that it would be difficult for her to have the right to speak. Zhang Xiaofeng looked at Lu Chaoga and said, "Teacher Lu, why don't you talk to Fang Yan? Explain it to him and don't let the young man leave with his emotions. In any case, he and our rosefinch are fated." "Principal, I'm afraid I'm not competent," Lu Chaoga coldly said. Zhang Xiaofeng's eyes turned cold. He thoughtfully looked at Lu Chaoga and said, "Principal Lu, you're in charge of the school's personnel. Why are you not competent? This matter was originally within your scope of work." "Because before Fang Yan was expelled, I might have resigned," Lu Chaoga said. "If he leaves, I'll leave too." Everyone was shocked. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.